No. It's the Straw Hats squaring off against the Gods Knights, the Gorosei and Eam, and then Fukuro just walks in like, "Pa, give me a second."
All right, everyone, welcome to what is going to be the first episode of Drink Sake. I actually don't have sake with me today.
Wait, this is episode 1? I'm on episode 1?
You are on episode 1, yeah. You're the premier guest popping the podcast cherry.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know, I felt like right now was like a good time to, start a One Piece podcast again. I feel like there's so much going to happen next year. There's so much going on right now in the story. We just started the new arc. I don't know. I was really pumped to start talking to people again. YouTube is luckily also treating long form content more kindly again now. So I thought like let's give it a shot and
give it a go.
The idea of the podcast of Drink Sake, obviously in relation to Bing Sake, I thought it would be kind of fun to. I also have a real life studio set up when people are in Japan that I can talk to get the classic sake cups for that Sabo, Ace, and Luffy use, and
like
then have
yeah.
Exactly, Sakazuki, and share sake cups and bond over One Piece. I thought would be kind of a nice.
That would be
nice
actually very
poetic
to actually have that scene, with the table and everything,
So we just talked about it a little bit before recording. You're planning to come over, so next time when you're actually in Japan, we gotta do it IRL also once.
Absolutely, I gotta see you. I'll be over there. I'll make sure to hit everybody up I know that stays in Japan. Well, over there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it your first time actually leaving the country also?
Yeah,
or?
It'll be my first time in Japan ever. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the first time I was outside the country was this year, outside the U.S. when I
where did you go?
I went to London in May for Comic-Con.
How was Europe?
It was lovely. I really just London, but I loved London. Just the architecture alone was just mind-blowing compared to 99% of the cities in the United States. But I just walking around. The food was amazing. Everybody was nice. It was me and
the food was okay, but not the British food, right? Just all the other stuff that they.
Okay, so to be fair, at the hotel I stayed at, we had a British breakfast. Actually, first meal I had in England was a British breakfast that I promptly threw up in the bathroom.
That sounds
not because of the food.
That sounds about right.
I was sick from the plane, and it was my whole body was messed up, and I was like, I just need some food in me. So we went to this place and got the beans and sausage and the eggs and everything, and I'm like, oh, this is good. And then halfway through it, I'm like, I need to go now. So
no.
Yeah.
How was your first time on a transatlantic flight? That must be a wild. I don't remember 6-7 hours.
It was about 6.5 hours there, and the thing with that is I have issues with motion sickness usually, and also some anxiety issues with that. So I'm on the flight, and I just got a coach seat. So I'm in the back of the plane, smashed between right center aisle between two people, and they were both fine. They were lovely, but they're used to flying. So the plane takes off. They're both out like a light, and I'm in the middle, white knuckling, I came this close to puking. And I'm I literally had to force it back. Nope, I'm not puking. I'm not being that guy on this flight. So it was hell all the way there. And
do you feel like it would have been better if you had a window seat or something?
Maybe it would have been better if I had a window seat. But anyway, I get to London, and the whole way there, I've never flown really all that much. I really have not flown that much in my life. I didn't fly for the first time until I was 25. Was the first time I ever flown.
Oh wow!
I'm 31 now. So the whole time I'm there, I'm loving London, but I'm kind of dreading the flight back because it's the same exact seat. And I had this epiphany where I'm like, man, I wish I could have changed my seat. And I'm like, wait a minute. You can do that. That's a thing that exists. Yeah. You can upgrade. I flew back first class, and it was heaven. It was amazing. and so that
I have never flown first class, but it sounds crazy.
I was like, I need to see how it is, and it's if I don't have get nauseous and puke, and it was so nice. I could lean back all the way in my chair. I could go to sleep. It was the first time I ever slept on a plane. It was the best. So
that is so good. Good food. I feel the dangerous thing with that is it's kind of it's kind of like when when you have too much of a nice thing, it's really hard to go back.
Yeah, that's how I felt. That's how I felt because like it was a perfect contrast between like heaven and hell between those two flights.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I would probably recommend you get consider a business upgrade or something.
Yeah. There's
for
something.
Japan.
There's like a middle version of that, like premium plus whatever it was.
Or premium economy is really good.
Yeah, and I'll try that out when I go there, or I'll just take some. I will get some anxiety medication or something to just knock me out for 6 hours because that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah,
or like some melatonin or something. I mean, because you're flying. You're in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah. So there's a
flying to LA or San Fran or where?
No, actually. Oh yeah. So Japan. The idea there is going to Los Angeles first.
Okay. My favorite airport, LAX.
LAX, man. It was fine when I went to Anime Expo a few years ago. That was all right. But
it's just a city.
My friend was talking about maybe stopping in Hawaii first. I don't know if we're going to do that. I don't know. We have to work that out. I think we're just going to go from LA and then stay at night in LA and then fly to Japan just to get a break from
Yeah. It's I mean, that's gonna be a longer trip for sure. So I feel like breaking it up a little bit and staying overnight might be more chill than flying. What do you fly like to LA? It's from your end probably
like
also
4
like
hours.
4 or 5 hours.
4 hours from LA. Yeah. It's on the other side of the world is Japan for me, pretty much exactly. So this is gonna be. I'm excited. I'm so pumped. Yeah.
One interesting thing that I'm always fascinated by is because you can't fly over Russia right now for obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons, yeah.
When I fly back to Europe, what they do now is you fly straight north over Hokkaido, fly straight north, and then you fly in this like tiny corridor that is exactly over Japan, which is exactly where like Alaska and like the most eastern part of Russia
Bering Strait kind of it. You fly right over like the like the date line. Like that's awesome.
Nothing blows my mind more than the fact that I think Russia and the US are actually like 50 miles apart.
Yeah. It's like right there. It's like right the international date line, and then the Diomede Islands are right in the middle there, and it's like this interesting little zone of the Bering Strait.
And then you're suddenly like on the north part of the world and you see that, Norway and Canada actually, I mean, obviously we're talking about like the most northern part.
Northern locations, but Canada.
Not that far apart,
I love geography, Ohara. I love geography.
Yeah, I do know. Please call me Manu, by the way.
Manu, I was going to say, which of the two,
The one thing we know, thing we know that you love geography. And I do too. As also like real world geography, which brings us, I guess, is a good point to like start easing into One Piece.
Yeah.
We just had a really crazy start into Elbaf. We're also gonna, by the point we're recording this, we have gotten chapter 1100 and I want to say 34. Mm-hmm. Sometimes gets a bit confusing with the numbers at this point with the chapters, but so there is a lot to discuss. So let me just ask you, I guess, to ease into things, because wild chapter, but how have you enjoyed the slight roller coaster ride that has been the introduction to the Elbaf arc so far?
I've enjoyed it quite a bit, and I remember talking about it. I'm still on the fence on this. I want to get your opinion on this as well. Do you think the Land of the Gods little mini arc there with Rhodes Lego City, do you think that could have standed to have like maybe one extra chapter or maybe like just a little bit of extra time in that little city?
So
I think
it's
a bit.
Yeah. For me, it's a classic case of this might read a lot better when we get more context for Elbaf. So like two or three of my Japanese friends here, they all consume One Piece in volume form. So they like wait 2-3 months, get the volume, and then they like, it's really interesting to see because they never complain about the same things that weekly readers complain about.
I understand.
So I'm not sure if you felt the same way. Like when we finally left, I think it was like 3 chapters, right? When we finally got out of there, I personally was like, what was the point of all, like,
that?
why couldn't we have, like what just happened? And I do feel like now it at least seems to me like, okay, this might have been like a little bit of a microcosm of what's actually going to go, to happen on Elbaf, and introducing us to like this role that the sun god Nika plays in Elbaf. So I feel like there is going to be a point to all of this, but I do agree. I feel like either cut out that part completely or elaborate on it a little bit more. But I do hope that we will just get more context throughout Elbaf now, where it's like, oh, this is why we did this entire thing, because all of Elbaf or the entire world is kind of like we're inside this Lego castle all along, just on a bigger scale. Like
yeah.
Yeah. I know there's.
And it made sense because, like, oh, you have the giant tree, Yggdrasil. Like, okay, we understood that was going to be relevant there. I made a joke that we have, like 6 sun gods walking around right now. Road claimed to be one. Loki. Luffy. Bonnie could turn into the sun god. The actual sun god, Nika. I mean, like, who knows, right? Joy
and
Boy
I mean, you can wait for Buggy to call himself the sun god.
Sun god. Like there's a sun god bargain sale here. Oh man. So that's gonna play a role into Elbaf, obviously, since they worship, the sun god and all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm actually working on a video right now, or like a video series where I'm kind of it's basically this like big theory that I'm trying to craft about the past of the One Piece world. And one thing I always found really fascinating recently is the thought that we're like so focused on the Void Century and Joy Boy and the Ancient Kingdom, right? Like what happened 800 years ago, where I almost feel like Oda has been, I think it's not confirmed, but like 99% there that, and again, curious to hear your thoughts, that to me, Luffy, Joy Boy, and Nika are like 3 different people, like where it like almost seems that Luffy ate the Nika fruit, Joy Boy also probably ate the Nika fruit, and then there might have been an actual person or character in the One Piece world at some point thousands of years ago that was actually the sun god Nika, and you kind of have this interesting discrepancy where, like obviously Kaido and King and Zunisha and Emmett, they all talk about Joy Boy, Luffy's Joy Boy, while meanwhile, the Shandorans and then the people of Elbaf, they talk about the sun god Nika. So it almost feels like there's like this split where some of these nations and people talk about the original character Nika, and then some of them are like Joy Boy, who is an incarnation of.
Exactly.
Again, curious what you think about it. Yeah,
that's an interesting point. And remember, like with the giants, and a lot of people brought this up, like they have longer lifespans, right? So Joy Boy's time, the Void Century time, would have been like a few generations back, but not really that long. And the fact that they've been worshiping this sun god for so long, I think it's pretty obvious that the giants on Elbaf have been worshiping Nika for longer than just 800 years or whenever Joy Boy had the fruit. This is like several thousands of years ago, maybe tens of thousands of years, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, that also ties back into Loki mentioning like the underworld is the primordial world. It's the first world. It's been here for a very, very long time. And it's like, okay, what do you mean by that, Loki? Are you just talking about like the origin of the planet, or are you talking about like something else going on here, right? Like when the tree was planted or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also like, one thing I'm always fascinated about, when we first got to see Elbaf and we had the confirmation of the Yggdrasil tree, I was like, oh, like the main thing from Norse mythology is obviously the 9 realms.
Yes.
And now it's kind of confirmed it's 3 realms. But then again, when we consider that, probably big chunks of Elbafs are like 200 meters below the sea level.
Yeah, there's other stuff under there. You could go inside of the tree. There's Needhog, which like chews on the roots of the tree. There's something at the top of the tree. So like
the eagle. Yeah, exactly. There's the deer also. We actually see a deer.
The deer of the There's 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, west on the branches. And in the world tree model, like the different realms, like Niflheim, I think Niflheim's like hell. It's like below. Jotunheim is the frost giant.
I think there is also hell. There's like 2 fireplaces. There's hell and Nifl,
Niflheimer, and then there's a bunch.
Jotunheim.
Asgard, Midgard.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're on the different realms, so maybe like the village they're in right now is consisting, like the Western Village is considered like one of the realms. So like there's 9 major areas in Elbaf, something like that they could do.
One thing I would love to see, and like let me know if you think that would be weird in One Piece or you'd like to see that as well. One of the 9 realms is inhabited by the Light Elves.
Yes.
Do you want to see elves in One Piece? Because I really want to see elves in One Piece.
We can throw elves in One Piece. I mean, why not?
Right at this point.
Oda has tackled every other fantasy trope at this point. It's kind of weird if he doesn't, have elves in his story at some point.
Because we have the Tontada, which are technically the dwarfs, I guess. Which I also was kind of wondering. We do know that, obviously you know that the Tontada aren't native to Greenbit in Dressrosa. So one thing I always wondered is, could it be that the Tontada actually came from Elbaf and like their realm was actually just submerged?
Could have been
so they
that,
needed to Same for the, like, particularly, like, for the minks also. You could be like, okay, what if they were also living on the tree, it got flooded, they fled onto the back of Zanisha,
It was
potentially.
literally a world tree at some point. Yeah, where like all the because the thing is, you have to
the
understand,
mythical.
yeah, because this tree, like, okay, first of all, we understand with Eve, it goes all the way to the bottom of the ocean because that's the whole point with the sun tree Eve. Adam also has to do the same thing. Like, I'm questioning, like, are these trees growing out of, like, the core of the planet? Because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. They have to go. Adam has to go all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. It has to, right? Like, yeah.
One interesting thing that one of my team members actually brought up to me, which I thought was fascinating, is that they said, okay, when we look at that sword, that insane sword, it's almost like if an actual, like, let's say it's not like Joy Boy or Nika and they like kind of like Luffy transformed themselves into this colossal creature and used the sword. Like, let's say there is an actual creature like with the skull on Onigashima that actually was able to use the sword. That would kind of mean that the Adam tree could even be like a sapling almost, which I thought was an interesting idea.
We could go the direction of Hunter x Hunter with it. Like, the world tree is like, this world tree couldn't even grow big enough. There's even bigger ones out there, you know?
Exactly. Or did the original one get cut? Again, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings at all.
Not as much as I should be. I read The Fellowship way back in high school, and I've yet to see the whole trilogy.
So if there's one franchise that I'm as knowledgeable about as One Piece, it's probably Lord of the Rings. Like, I read everything, like Silmarillion and like the Lost Tales
you're a
and everything.
super fan. You know about all that stuff. You're Tolkien.
I do know the deep lore, and I do always find that I always feel like Oda must have at least read Lord of the Rings too, because there's a lot of interesting parallels. So in Lord of the Rings, part of the creation story of Middle Earth is actually that originally there wasn't a sun or a moon. There were just these two giant trees, the sun tree and the moon tree. And they got then destroyed by like some evil forces, and that's where they like needed to actually like create new sun and new moon and so on and so forth. So I was like, interesting, like the two trees of creation, that like got destroyed. I wonder if there's like a parallel here, with One Piece
Tolkien's
2, where we have obviously
on modern fantasy is like everywhere. Like, pretty much everybody that's writing fantasy has had to have read or at least taken something from Tolkien at some point. So I'm sure Oda definitely has as well. Yeah.
No, so that's, I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff with Elbaf in general. Obviously, like, do you believe in the time dilation theory?
Yeah, I made a video talking about all the referencing Louis Arnault's message specifically. That was what the video was about. Is like, don't linger here for too long. So we're like, okay, let's go through the simplest ones first. Like, it's a war-torn nation, so maybe just you stay there long enough, you could die. Giants could step on you, whatever. You could be so captivated by the beauty you don't want to leave. We took that even further to be like, what if you go up in the heaven layer and you see like the not like the real spirits, but like images of your loved ones, and you never want to leave or something like that. And we also talked about time dilation. It could be you age faster on Elbaf, or it actually does something with the time space continuum itself.
Yeah, I've seen interesting ideas. So one interesting thing, and I think that made its way, I'm not 100% sure, I think that made its way into the English community as well, but that I saw fairly early after that chapter came out in the Japanese community, was that people were like, oh, it's weird that Oda never gave a clear, like, I think he was asked how old is Shanks, and he was like, oh, I guess, he gave a really weird answer in like that SBS. He was like, oh, well, if we consider, how things are right now, he's probably around this age. And people were speculating, oh, well, he looked so young and different, like when he met Luffy, and then he suddenly aged like apparently like 30 years in like the 10 years that Luffy, grew up. Like, he's like this completely different person.
That's interesting.
Could he have... Right?
I've never thought about it like that. I always assumed he was like, he's like 39 or something like that, right?
Yeah, Oda just gave like a really, I'm going to have to, maybe I can look that up. He gave like a really weird answer to it.
I that's interesting to understand, like, what the Japanese community is like analyzing about a specific chapter or character versus how we're doing it like over here in the West.
I'm trying to
But yeah, I never even heard that one before, because I always assumed, I never thought of Shanks
So the SBS question was, how old are Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and Shanks? And then he gets to Shanks. He says, Shanks is currently missing, but I'll tell you how old he was 10 years ago when he was at Luffy's village. He was then 27 years old, which is he could just say he's 37, which he doesn't say. Like, he's like 10 years ago, he was 27 years old.
Yeah, that's
So-
from like one of the earlier ones too. That's probably like SBS,
Yeah.
like Volume 4 or something, right? Yeah,
Yeah, it is volume 4.
I nailed it.
Yep.
yeah.
Let's go.
But yeah, it's stuff like that though, way back at the beginning that you gotta question. Like, all right, did he know back then he was gonna do some shenanigans with this? But
Yeah.
yeah.
Which is actually interesting because that would technically mean that, which I personally like a little bit more, you kind of have the Dragon Ball Z like hyperbolic chamber
Yeah,
effect
yeah.
where time passes faster on Elbaf actually, which makes the giants, I guess, technically even older, which I like more because that would basically give Luffy and Co. the chance to get stronger, train, but not as much time has passed outside of Elbaf compared to, it would be kind of weird if Elbaf time flew slower, and then the Straw Hats are like 2 days on Elbaf, but outside 4 months have passed, and everyone has like, the world has moved on.
I could see. Well, no, the world would be in way more chaos because of all of the the riots and the rebellions, and as Dragon said, like people are going to start freaking out because there's not going to be a place to stay. So I could see from both directions here. Like the Straw Hats are like, oh, okay, the Oda's like, I need to power them up. We need to go through some giant training and stuff, and then for the final arcs and all that stuff. Or they leave the island and it's like, oh, it's absolute bedlam out here. Like, what do we do? Oh man, 6 months have gone by.
I feel like the one thing I like feel like wouldn't really like about that is that it kind of sets, because the Straw Hats clearly still need to grow, like they're not at the right level yet.
For
and I'm like giving everyone else a head start basically now is like feels kind of like.
Akainu's not going to get much stronger than he already is, but
he doesn't need to. That's true.
He doesn't
but I
need
mean,
to.
Blackbeard can do stuff.
Yeah, Blackbeard can do a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Another interesting theory that I had, which is, I think, not maybe as fun as the time dilation, but one thing I thought was cool, again, going to the Lord of the Rings, there is, in the second movie, two of the hobbits, Pippin and Merry, they go into the Fangorn forest where the trees are alive and super big. And so there is, like, they find out that there is, like, something in the water there that makes things grow bigger and gives them, like, extra power. And so they drink it and they grow like a couple of inches taller for hobbit, right? Making them, like a bit bigger. And so I thought it was really interesting that there's this weird emphasis on Elbaf around water, where it's like the warrior spring. We don't really know where all these waterfalls, like I actually went into like a 10-minute rant, I think, in my last chapter review. Where it's like, where's all that water actually coming from? Like, it can't rain that much.
Yeah, it has to be, because like you'd say rain, but it's above the clouds. It's like island clouds can exist in the middle layer, so like,
and it wouldn't rain all the time, so you have these streams of water running down that entire, right? And like, I actually looked, like in the village, we actually see that a waterfall is coming out of the castle.
Yeah.
So I'm like, is the water flowing inside of the tree? Is there like an inner
out, or like filtering out the salt water into fresh water? I mean, it's a magic tree. You could say it does that. That's fine, but like, yeah.
I feel like we're at that point in the story, though, where I almost feel like the excuse, it's One Piece, things are going to be weird, deal with it, like, doesn't hold up anymore, because I feel like Oda has made it very clear in recent years that, to me, he has set it up that everything in this world actually has an explanation, is like the vibe I'm getting. I'm not sure if you're the same way.
What I should have said there was like, I'm okay with that explanation of it's a magic tree, but Oda will explain how it works. Like, he's not just going to be like, it's a magic tree, forget about it. He'll be like, no, this is how the water goes through the roots, and it goes through the system, and then yada, 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 and it pours out here, and then whatever. That's how you get water on this place. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, long story short, I was wondering if could the danger be that if you get into contact with that water, if you drink that water, is that what makes things grow big on Elbaf? Is that why there are giants and giant animals and giant trees and so on and so forth?
That only question is, like, wouldn't the giants be like aware of that fact? And there were like humans like Mother Caramel that lived on the island for quite some time, and she never grew giant. So that was like I remember a lot of theories about that when I made that video, like, oh, maybe you grow big on Elbaf. And Mother Caramel kept screwing around with all of these theories, because it's like she lived there for like decades, and so did the kids from the Lamb's House, and they never turned into giants. And also, you'd think, like,
at first, I was kind of wondering if like Big
would
Mom
have warned them or something, like, you can't drink this water. Yeah.
At first, I was thinking if Big Mom could be a good proof of point for that, because her parents are regular humans, but she was already big when she arrives, right? Yeah.
Which I think the explanation on that is just there's like lineage, like giant lineage in her blood, and it skips generations. And like same reason, like some characters like Whitebeard are really huge. Kaido same way.
Right.
Yeah.
I do wonder though, like at the same time, I always thought it was interesting that people on Wano, for instance, are so much bigger, and Wano being so close to Elbaf, if there is something about whether it's the water or like the pyrobloin or something, like if there is something like scientific, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, about Elbaf that kind of has this impact on like
the surrounding
not the same
like climates. And
yes, not on the
ecologies.
same level, but where like countries like Wano are affected by it like marginally as well, and things there get a little bit bigger as well. For example, like
Dude,
I don't know.
wonder if it's gonna be like Oda's gonna spin it like evolution, where it's like, yeah, deeper into the new world, things are more dangerous, so humans have to grow bigger to combat those dangers. That's how you have like Kinemon being like 9 feet tall or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's insane.
Yeah, same as Brook. Brook's like, I think Brook and Kinemon are like equal height, like around 9 feet tall, something like that.
They're
yeah.
both really big. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the like, and I'm sure we're gonna get into different parts of Elbaf throughout the video. But let's talk about the red-haired elephant in the room, I guess.
Yes, indeed.
We have evil Shanks, but not in the way that some people have imagined it, I guess.
Evil Shanks. Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, pretty sure that was like the idea of the person talking to the Gorosei back in like chapter like the original. Yeah.
Yes.
Oda was very careful to not reveal the scar in that chapter, which I didn't even realize because back then I don't know. I don't know if people were talking about Shanks having a twin back then, but it was like now it's very clear. Yeah.
I think at least there was the idea that Shanks might have a brother once the Figureland stuff got revealed more and more.
Once that stuff started happening, but
like
Reverie
that
was,
idea
like,
has
years
definitely
ago.
been around. Yeah. One interesting thing I saw also people discuss is, for example, this twin. I mean, I think when we were talking on Discord like yesterday, I was like, even if it's his second cousin removed, like I'm still happy.
Third cousin twice removed, marry into the family, whatever. And also the person that was when we saw the splash page of like the 12 individuals of like who's gonna claim the One Piece, and it's like, by the way, the most surprising individual on that entire list, Aokiji, was Kuzan. I was just like, oh, Kuzan is a contender for that. Okay, but then we also saw shadowy image of probably Shanks' brother, and like, okay, clearly, yeah.
I was like, that was sick. One thing that I think is really interesting now that this is almost confirmed, I guess, is what instances of Shanks that we've seen before were actually not Shanks at all. So, for example,
Oda can play with that big time. Yeah.
Right? So now one thing that I've been like wondering, like that people have been bringing up quite a lot in general is Shanks was at the Marineford War way too quickly.
Yep. Yeah.
Theoretically, for having been in Wano, right? And like trying to stop Kaido. So
was
his twin actually with Kaido, and he was there because he was there with his crew, but then like it's really strange.
Yeah, that's something. You know what? I'll be straight up honest with you. That's one aspect of One Piece. Every time someone brings that, like, oh, Shanks got there too quick, I'd be like, I've never really thought about it like that. He's Shanks. He can go wherever he wants. But no, when you start to think about it, yeah, that's true. And even people brought up like the painters, the Sunstone stuff. It was like, oh, maybe he used the Sunstone to make a river to go over the. That's how we got there that fast.
That is
be like, all right. I mean, maybe. I guess. I don't know. But I think overall the message here, I mean, it's pretty obvious that Oda's going with like a nature versus nurture kind of argument, because the Tenryubito are just awful people, right?
Really, what makes you
I don't
say
know,
that?
man. It's just Charlos. Charlos is like every now and then he just does things that's just weird. I don't know. He just like a little bit like
bad vibes.
What? Yeah, bad vibes every once in a while from Charlos. But no,
Casually.
yeah, I mean, like they're awful. We've seen exceptions with this. We've seen Homing was okay. Homing's currently unnamed wife was, I guess, okay. And Mulesguard, of course, saw the light through
all the Don Quixotes,
Otohime and everything. But the idea is that Roger raised Shanks, and then Shanks also had a twin brother that was raised by Garling and turned out horrible, just like all the others, and is a God's Knight. And probably with the way that this, I guess, the promotions work, so Garling was the supreme commander of the God's Knights. He gets promoted to the Gorosei. I'm assuming Evil Shanks is now going to be the new supreme commander of the God's Knights, and how that everyone just gets bumped up. Yeah.
It does feel like both of them, like this mysterious woman also would probably be a God Knight, which is interesting because
Shanks' hot sister.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah,
I'm down.
meme.
I'm down.
That's the meme.
Yeah, I think one other really interesting fact about the Kaido thing though is it would make a lot of sense if it was actually not Shanks trying to stop Kaido, but actually, this Holy Knight. Because a Holy Knight trying to stop another emperor from coming to
Marineford.
Marineford makes more sense than, because especially now with everything we know, like I've always thought, okay, in the end, Kaido really wanted to bring forth Joy Boy, which is, I guess, something that Shanks per se wouldn't really have a problem with, but the Holy Knights definitely wouldn't want to have a third Yonko or a second Yonko suddenly appear at that war, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. And it's like the Gods Knights, I sometimes question when they get involved, because it's like the revolutionaries, you had Morley, Karasu waging like bedlam up in Marijua with like when they're getting Kuma back. Gods Knights do not get involved with that. Kuma walks through it. It's Akainu is the one that stops him there. And it's like, okay, when do the Gods Knights leave Castle Pangaea and actually do stuff? But yeah, you bring up a good point. Like, you got the Marines dealing with Whitebeard and all of his allies. Another Yonko showing up could have obliterated all of Marineford. And at that point, the Gods Knights are like, all right, we should probably go deal with that,
And I guess the fact that, like, Shanks' brother, I mean, we can just assume at this point, just power scaling wise, it does not make sense for not all of them to be absolutely bonkerly broken.
They
right?
have to be insanely powerful. 11th hour, like, these weren't really mentioned in the story up until, like, the last 100 chapters or so. Like, by the way, the Gods Knights, which is, by the way, okay, because, it would make sense that the greatest warriors in the world would be, like raised by the Tenryubito as their fighting forces and stuff like that. But it's not a surprise they exist. It's just like, okay, when do they actually step in,
When do they do stuff? And I'm kind of wondering also when, for example, when Shanks goes to see Whitebeard and talk about Blackbeard, right? We're always curious. We got this comment like, oh, whenever I see your face, my scar aches.
My scar aches. It's like,
I think at first everyone was like, Roger. Then we were like, Garling. And now maybe it was the twin. Who knows?
Evil Shanks. Yes, absolutely.
Evil Shanks.
That's also
Is it confirmed?
Oh, go ahead.
I was like kind of wondering right now, even like, has it ever been officially confirmed that Shanks' scar is from Blackbeard's claw, or could it be that he got that?
Yeah,
from...
I mean, Shanks said as much. Just like
Did
the
he say
scar.
that?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, and also, like the reason he has the scar mainly probably now, and it makes more sense, is to differentiate him from the twin. Oda might have been setting that up for the long game a long time ago. It's just like, that's how you can tell the difference between them. One has a scar. There you go.
Which again kind of makes you wonder, and it kind of makes me one of the many instances in recent years where I'm like, I kind of want to reread through the entire manga, just looking at Shanks panels and being like, is this actually is it him? Be it him or be it his
I think
brother?
most of the Shanks stuff Oda had planned from the very beginning, because Shanks was super prominent in Chapter 1. And then it's like, okay, so for the most part, we're not going to really focus on him at all. But until the final saga, and that's when we finally get most of like Shanks' stuff. So I think that Oda had all that planned out years ago.
It makes it so much more complicated too, because Shanks himself is already a little bit like Blackbeard, has like these. I mean, Blackbeard is obviously a lot more schizophrenic almost, which again might be due to multiple personalities or not. But even Shanks, he has like, it's not to that extent, but he also has this like very goofy party, like taking things lightly side. He has this, kind of like very serious, powerful. Like there are like interesting facets to his character where and like now the fact that we can't rely every time we see him that it's actually him is like really interesting to me. Also, a thing that like occurred to me as well, like Luffy is gonna have no clue at the beginning that this is not actually Shanks.
Dude, Shanks, okay, he shows up at Elbaf and the intruders are here, and it's like, all right, Luffy sees him. What happens next? Hey, Shanks, it's been forever. What happened to your scar? Whatever. And just like stab.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Do you feel like Luffy's? I mean, I'm never sure if it's actually his voice of all things, or if it's more like his intuition, his observation hockey, or like what's special about him. Where like Rayleigh mentioned that he has like this good grasp of people's true intentions. I wonder if that would be enough for Luffy to be like, Shanks, and then he's like, wait, you're not Shanks or something.
Okay, you know what? I actually really like that idea, because the idea of like Luffy thinking it's Shanks and then runs over to him and just gets stabbed, he's like, he couldn't notice that he's not really Shanks, when he's got the cloak, he doesn't have the scar. It's like, come on, Luffy, obviously,
Yeah.
right? But like, yeah, if he immediately noticed like that's not Shanks, I'd be like, ooh,
like, who
that's
are
cool,
you?
because Luffy's
Yeah.
okay. He's an idiot, but he's not an idiot. You know what I mean?
He's not. Yeah,
he's not book smart. Yeah,
he's emotionally really smart.
he's
yes, I
emotionally
would say.
smart. He would know. Yeah, the vibe check is off with this Shanks. Yeah.
Which actually brings me to my next question, and I do want to return to Evil Shanks Twin as well.
But
But since we're
that's fine.
since we're on the topic of this, Luffy being able to kind of gouge people's true intentions, I have had this pet theory ever since we got Loki. I was like, I want Loki to actually end up being an ally, and
He's the good guy. He's the good guy. Yeah.
now we kind of it seems like Oda is more and more hinting towards that, but my argument for that was always Luffy clearly is the one who feels his presence, and I'm like, Luffy would never stand on Loki and talk to him and make a promise to him. Like, yes, Loki could just deceive him, and that could be his entire devil fruit thing, and like, Loki obviously has that associated with his character, but to me, the fact that Luffy is like the one thing he does so well is like understand what people's true intentions are. And the fact that he was so willing to help him and, converse with him so casually and friendly, to me always was a really strong sign that Luffy like felt that this person was not bad at heart, at least.
Yeah,
was like
definitely.
the vibe I was getting.
I mean, like, Luffy is okay as long as it's not a devil fruit based ability that maybe Loki could do, because Luffy is easily manipulated through things like hypnotism and the colors trap and stuff like that. So maybe something like that's going on. But in terms of just like him approaching Loki and just like, hey, yeah, okay, I'll have this conversation with you, and they made some kind of like overall deal where I guess he'll tell him something about Shanks or some such, if he gets the key back or something. So that's Luffy's little side quest he has going on right now. But yeah,
which to me it was also always interesting to kind of consider, Loki, like everything we know about Loki. Again, it's not confirmed information. So I think one option that I always thought was interesting was that Loki actually got framed potentially for killing his father, and that actually just didn't happen potentially. Especially,
I think he did kill Harold, but I think it was like in the chapter we say, oh yeah, King Harold, he was a peaceful man, he loved peace, and I'm like, I don't know, did he?
That's
did he though? I don't know. Or maybe Loki was just like, no, father, we will, this is the war land. We will not go to the peace land. I'll murder you. I don't know.
Or maybe, or it's the classic case of, oh no, he like, yeah, this guy was such a great and nice king, but he actually did some really messed up things in secret, and then Loki was like, I need to stop, like who I'm thinking of, like Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones,
Aerys Targaryen, the Mad King from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
See, you're a Lord of the Rings guy. I'm a Game of Thrones guy. So this is
Let's go.
That'll work out perfect. Yeah, there you go.
We're balancing ourselves out really well here.
Out.
Yeah. And another thing I thought was interesting is that the Sun God, obviously, and I talked about this more in relation to Luffy previously in like some theories I've made, but I always thought you have this really interesting connection with like devils. You have the biblical theme devils with Luffy. You have the kind of the Sun God Prometheus theme. And one interesting thing in the Bible actually is that they're like, the thing with the devil is that he got banished from heaven.
Yes.
Like Lucifer got banished from heaven after rebelling against God, but he did that with like a third of all the angels.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was him who was like, I'm gonna be bad. He was like, Lucifer was like, I don't think you're running things the right way, and like a third of all your people agree with me.
You can also
and
look at the idea like Lucifer Lightbringer, like that's reference as well to Sun God. Yeah.
And that in our actual mythology, like there is a clear connection, like mythologically, between Lucifer and Prometheus, who is also this god who went
against the gods,
underling of Zeus,
stole a piece of the flame, and
to bring flame and fire to humanity. And so I thought it was always, and then you have with Loki obviously this exact image of Prometheus being chained to the rock, right, and being punished for trying to do something good in theory and going against the So I don't know. I feel like there's like some interesting.
There's also, I mean, the straight up comparison in Norse mythology to Loki being chained to the boulder, although that was because he manipulated a god to kill another god. And it's way more dark in Norse mythology because they kill one of Loki's sons and use his entrails as the chains to actually bind him to the rock. So that's a little intense there. But yeah, also Adam, Eve, Genesis, the tree of knowledge and the fruit and the apple and all that stuff. That could also be referenced there. You said earlier with like Joy Boy and Luffy and the actual sun god Nika, I thought you were gonna like go to Trinity there for a moment. Like we could go from that direction. There's lots of Oda's going way more biblical than with this in the last few arcs. Like definitely.
I have just uploaded a video that I actually called Bible Piece, where I went into all of this. I mean, you have literally all these elements where Luffy genuinely takes both these roles of like One Piece Jesus and One Piece Devil at the same point, right? It's really interesting because he has like the coming back to life moment also, literally dying and coming back before he awakens his Gear 5th and becoming God and having his awakening. So there is a lot of really
interesting. It's kind of on the nose when you look at it like that. Yeah.
One crazy thing I realized recently is that the rock in Israel where Jesus was crucified is actually what's the name for it? There. Okay, so the name also had a connection. It's the shape of a skull.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because
I will probably mess it up. Yeah, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's the shape of a skull, kind of like Onigashima. So you have, it's I don't know. It's there's like a lot of stuff there. Rock that. Jesus.
Kuma is a priest too, and that was referenced. We see a cross with the sun symbol in it.
Exactly.
So it's like, all right, that's a religion that exists in this world. Yeah.
The Rock of Calvary. Yeah.
I
feel like there was another name.
Because Calvary was
Golgotha.
That was the hill where he was crucified.
Yes, Golgotha is the hill. I feel like there was something with Golgotha recently that I realized was connected to One Piece 2, but I forgot. Oh, there's something with Nika here.
Yeah.
Luffy's defeat and subsequent blah blah blah. Just as the that's literally in the wiki also with the stone here. Okay, I didn't realize that. So I thought that was really interesting, and obviously, like as you said, with the Garden of Eden, the fruit of knowledge, like the devil, it's literally the app. Like the fruit is literally the devil fruit, where the devil basically gives Eve the fruit, and the fruit of knowledge just means that she gains
the knowledge
that
evil.
God is. Yeah, and the knowledge that God withheld from her basically, and for that she gets punished. It's really interesting. I don't know. There's like so much biblical stuff happening.
There's a lot of biblical stuff. Also, the burning of the tree of knowledge at Ohara that comes back into play here with Saul and everybody.
Yeah.
It really does add a whole new back theme to what's going on. Of like we're getting into it's like the final boss fight in like a Final Fantasy game or something. Like the choir music, it's in Latin, it starts playing. It's like, oh man, we've come a long way since Zoro and Usopp were fighting Django in the woods out behind Usopp's house. This is getting way more intense.
Dude,
now.
it's so good. And what I love most about it is that Oda took that entire ancient mythology Bible stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then also we have, by the way, but most of that we also have insanely technologically advanced space races that came down to colonize the One Piece world from the moon and stuff. So we're kind of marrying these alien stuff and
You bring up the alien stuff because with all this god stuff going on, would be crazy if a lightning god shows up from the moon right about now on a flying airship.
Do you feel like it's gonna happen?
He has to show back up at some point. When this is the moment, it's a giant tree. Eneru could just basically jump down and land on the top of the tree. There you go.
Do you subscribe to the idea that the heaven layer that Burka was on the top layer of? That was always a pet theory I had a little bit. Where we heard about the.
Wasn't it?
No, now it's not there. It would not be there anymore. But we always heard that the entrance to the Sky Islands would be somewhere in the west, right? So, and the idea,
right. So the High West thing, yeah.
The High West thing.
I was talking about this with Artur a little while ago, and it was I don't know, because Gonfall talked about it, and he was the god of Skypiea, which was just one little region of the sky, because that's one little section of the world. The world is huge, right? There's so many Sky Islands. I always assumed that High West was a mountain somewhere around that general area in the Grand Line where Skypiea was, and that's what Gonfall was talking about. You take High West, you pass an island or two, then you get to Skypiea, but this is on the opposite side of the world. So,
right.
I don't know, I'm
interesting.
hesitant, but I could see him doing that very easily, yeah.
like maybe this is just how I construed it in my own head. I was like, oh, well, you go up the tree, you go up the big tree on Elbaf. Like even before we reached Elbaf, I was always like, oh, we're gonna go up the tree, and then there's gonna be this like actual gate where you can reach the sky layer basically through Elbaf. And I was always thinking like, okay, maybe then around that entrance, because we do know that NL came from Burka like quite a distance to Skypiea, like maybe that is what's Burka used to be, which again would kind of bring Arush potentially into Elbaf,
like
which I think a lot of people have been hyped
bring Arush
about.
into this too, because he's like the last supernova that hasn't really done anything yet. So like bring him back, yeah.
Which also I'm like so curious because he was the one who defeated Cracker, right? No, sorry,
he defeated Snack. Yeah,
Snack. Yes, correct.
Poor Snack, never got a chance.
Poor boy. Yeah, so I'm very hyped for Arush as well, and like the Burka backstory, and there are so much cool things with, like what's the relationship between all the sky races, because clearly the Lunarians were like the most important one, but also like did they come down in like, was it that all the sky races came down from the moon together, or were the Lunarian kind of like the ones that ruled over everyone?
That is a good point, because we're understood that the Shandorians, they made it all the way down to the Blue Sea, and that's where they established the Gold City. Meanwhile, the Skypians and Burkans, they stayed in the sky. So it's like maybe they came down in waves, like they didn't come all down at once. And then where did the Lunarians factor in all this? Lunarian, obviously they came from the moon, but that one mural we saw only had like 3 sky races depicted, and the Lunarians have black wings, make them more like distinctive. So like, with the fire and everything. So it's like, were they like the rulers of the moon, and then they went down to the red line after the moon was mined out of resources? Like what's going on here?
There is some interesting stuff going on. So this is another theory we've been working on for a while now. So I'm gonna give like a little breadcrumb here.
Yeah.
There is like some really weird thing with like the moon going on to like it almost must be within the One Piece planet's atmosphere.
Oh yeah, because you can just float up to the thing. Like you don't even.
Yeah, the fact that you can use a balloon to float up, and then that Enel can breathe up there is really strange. Yeah. So. And in general, there is obviously like weird stuff going on with the One Piece planet itself. That's really fascinating. Also, have you ever realized like One Piece, like Oda must be like the biggest conspiracy theorist ever, because he has all the conspiracies in there. The government is like a secret government ruler, and the hollow moon theory, and there's a civilization on the moon.
I'll tell you this much, it's because a lot of those conspiracy theories, they're not true, but it's like a fun way of viewing reality. Like, imagine if the Earth was hollow and there were dinosaurs in the center. It's like, yeah, I mean, like for a fantasy story, go ahead and do it. I was looking at, there was like a flat Earth meme I saw a couple days ago, and it was like a diagram of the Earth as the flat Earth, and it's like, here's the Earth where we live, then there's the ice wall, then there's the gray wastes and the endless desert behind it. And I'm like, I was sharing this with my D&D group, like, dude, as a D&D,
this is epic
as hell. Like, yeah, we can just use this. Like the lost continent of Mu is over here, and it's like, okay, I'll use this as my D&D map or some shit, man.
Mu and Lemuria, and
Mu is the lost. And for anybody not knowing what that is, Mu is it's a continent that supposedly exists in like the Pacific Ocean between Asia and the North American continent that was like talked about for a while. It doesn't exist,
there's three mystical continents. I think there's obviously like Atlantis, which would be like in the Atlantic, and then I think there's Lemuria, which is somewhere like next to Africa and India, which is also like one of those. There
was an idea for a long time, because like the idea of how the world worked was different back in like the Middle Ages. We're really going off the topic here, but I'll just get through this really quick and then we'll go.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I love it.
But no, there was a common idea like as above, so below. I'm sure you've heard of that. Absolutely. So the idea was there has to be an equal number of continents in the north and in the south. And this is coming from scholars in Europe that haven't explored the world. This is like in the 1400s at the time. So the idea was there's got to be a southernmost continent. Now, they were right, but it didn't turn out like the world is not perfectly divided with continents in the north and south hemisphere, but their assumption there had to be a southernmost continent was correct. So it's weird how that stuff kind of lines up everything.
Yeah. I mean, there is like interesting stuff. I'm like very, very much into this like alternate history stuff. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like the Graham Hancock stuff and ancient civilizations and so on and so forth.
I've watched a lot of YouTubers that like debunk Graham Hancock and stuff like that. But I love like watching like the ideas of that. Yeah.
will say though, like taking everything with like a skeptical view, I will say the fact that you have this like megalithic architecture in Egypt, and like it exists all over the world, and no one know, like for all these countries, no one really knows who built these things, and I feel like that is just very like a fun thing to think about. And again, like the idea that like the fact that 10,000 years ago, the sea levels in our world actually did rise like 100 meters. Like that's that we know that, like during the Younger Dryas, right?
Yeah,
like
Younger Dryas
a lot.
period,
Yeah, a lot of land was like previously, lost. Like England was connected to main Europe and so on and so forth.
And then there's like the whole thing with the ice sheets melting, and this going back like tens of thousands of years to when the sea levels rose because the ice melted and everything. So,
exactly,
at one
and
point,
then
the British Isles were connected to everything. Yeah,
exactly, and they keep finding older stuff. There's this one site in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe, which is like
yeah, you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing I will bring about that is something that Graham Hancock and some other people will bring up. It's like it's impossible that simple hunter-gatherers could have built these structures. Dude, we're not talking about simple hunter-gatherers at that point. People had language and culture, and they had the ability, working together to move rocks around. They could have done this. This is not like just because they didn't have access to technology, they could have still done this. All right? Like
I think the big point that some of these people are trying, and again, I'm not like 100% with Graham Hancock on everything, but like I think like one point that he does make, which is fair, is that I think it is always like there's always a lot of pushback where like, oh no, these people were just primitive, they didn't have the wheel, they didn't have our agriculture, right? But then like I think he kind of hyperbole, he does say like, hey, if these people didn't have even agriculture and didn't have the wheel, how in the world did they have the free time to like build giant temples and whatnot? So I think it's more like a challenge towards like established archaeology, where it's like
is coming from. Also, keep in mind it's for a show, so there's going to be a level of like, okay, gotta build this up for entertainment's sake. Like,
absolutely.
the mainline archaeological community doesn't like me, so I'm here to make this show to prove I'm like that's the premise of a show. So like I'm looking at that as well. But anyway.
And I will say I feel
One
like
Piece.
I will, and saying like talking about One Piece, I do feel like again Oda he clearly is into that ancient civilization stuff too, because it's legitimately the poneglyphs and like this like global spanning seafaring civilization is literally what One Piece is about.
Exactly what it turns out to be, which is what he, like,
with the sea levels rising. I thought that was like, I was like, okay, this is we're like you're taking clearly like you're reading a lot of that stuff like clearly.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I love.
To put that into the story and actually incorporate it in a way that makes sense in the context of his world and what's going on, and we get to see that through the character's eyes figuring this out. What's fascinating is when he was going through Vegapunk's message and it was showing all the reactions from the civilians in the world of like the sea levels are rising and there were these ancient weapons 800 years ago and this super technologically kingdom existed, and like some of the people like, how would you even react to information like that? Like Nojiko was like, I'm going back to my farm. Or, how does this like ancient weapons from 800 years ago? How does that affect me? I'm going back to my tangerines, you know.
I mean, that's genuinely. I guess you could call it One Piece world disclosure.
I have these discussions with my one friend a lot. Like we'll be talking about like that kind of different stuff, and my friend's wife will just be like, I don't really care about any of this. How does this affect me? I'm like, good point, I guess. Like, we're just talking about, like, stuff from, like, 20,000 years ago.
Yeah.
You know?
Or I guess, like, I mean, even like, if tomorrow, like, you found out that, like, aliens are real and stuff, like, I guess most people, like, it would be, like, an ontological shock, but at the same time, like, what are you going to do? Like, you're just going to go back to work anyways the next day,
or if
right?
we found out we were in the Matrix right now, it'd be like, okay,
right, you're like,
well,
all
how
right,
does that
cool,
change my life tomorrow? Like, what is that, you know?
Still got to pay taxes.
Can we get an upgrade to the Matrix? Can we get that DLC patch or something like that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I feel like, it's kind of like this, I guess, this interesting parallel to like ontological shock in the One Piece world. One thing I will say that I would love, like, why did Vegapunk not just say, by the way, Luffy, he's actually, kind of a cool dude. Like, the entire world just thinks Luffy's the absolute, like, most evil pirate ever.
Yeah. Vegapunk tried to, and Saul brought it up in the last chapter. He said, like, well, Vegapunk, you know how he was. He didn't want to make anybody seem good or evil. He was just expressing the idea of knowledge, and ultimately that was the will of Ohara, and that was why he was doing that. And I'm just like, all right, I get it, but like,
but still,
Vegapunk, if this was your kill switch message, you could have thrown out a lot of stuff about like, you don't understand, Quasar, the world government has done so many horrible things. You need to rise up, people. Like something like that. It's like if he's dead anyway, then like whatever. Yeah.
What's your feeling about that? I personally thought the fact that Vegapunk said he did not know which side was morally correct during the Great War was so fascinating to me.
Oh, yeah.
And it really, I don't know why, like I was aware of this fact and it just never really sunk into my head until very recently. The fact that before the Void Century, we have this, what is it called? The big age of slavery in the One Piece world. Like that fact just never made it into my head. I always had this like this headcanon, I guess, of, oh, everything, like there was paradise under the ancient kingdom, and then these like greedy 20 kings rose up and everything went to hell, and like now Luffy needs to reestablish paradise. Like the One Piece world was absolutely terrible, like probably even worse before the Void
Artor said it. It was like the One Piece world is like a post-apocalyptic world, or maybe a post-apocalyptic world, who knows. But like, yeah, the way that this is originally going to be painted, and it was like kind of like a standard paint by numbers way to do a manga, was like, oh, ancient kingdom, technologically advanced, they were the good guys, and then the government were the bad guys. And it's like,
clearly
that would
not.
be such a boring like fifth grader way of like doing this story. You know what I mean? Like, meanwhile, you have like the revelation that Lily was a part of this coalition of 20 kingdoms that got together, and she's probably not going to turn out to be evil. Now she left for reasons, so maybe she was like, I don't like the way you guys are doing this, I'm going to back home. But the reason,
or this wasn't the deal, maybe
this
like
wasn't
this is
the
not
deal.
what we
we didn't plan on erecting a world government. We were planning on just like taking care of this kingdom that had these weapons that they were using to destroy the world, and then after that we were going to have like, we were going to rule by committee or something. We weren't planning on doing this. And then Nerona probably got involved there and stuff, and just like we have a lot to learn about this, but it's not going to be as simple as like good side, evil side, and that's as simple as it was. Yeah.
I think it also kind of ties in again nicely into Joy Boy and Nika, where I really want to hear your thoughts. The more we get to see of Luffy using his devil fruit, the more I get the feeling that Nika themselves is not this like purely happy god of liberation. Like whenever we see Luffy do stuff from like the crew's perspective, it's like funny, goofy laughing, but like, and they nail that home really hard in the anime, but also in the manga, like whenever he fights opponents, like they don't see this goofy goofball jumping around having fun. They see this like demon.
They see the
absolutely.
terror of their nightmares. You know, Luffy beating you up would be the scariest shit ever.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering, like, almost if Nika themselves could have been like, yes, a liberator, but also like just this like force of chaos. Almost.
Oh
right?
yeah, like ultimate force of like going by like the alignment chart. I've always put Luffy as like chaotic good, but like you could kind of see like definitely chaotic. But, like, yeah, maybe the idea of, like, the sun god Nico was, like, yeah, freedom and stuff, but, like, a lot of people die in that process, you know?
Yeah,
of,
like
the
almost
absolute chaos
anarchistic.
That they bring, yeah. Which is kind of what Blackbeard's going for right now. And that brings it up to the different ideas of how the members of the Will of D interpret freedom. Because that scene in Jaya, man, where Luffy and Blackbeard are having the pie, and it's like, oh, this is really good pie, this is crappy pie, I like this juice, I don't like this juice. That is a big deal, comparing those two characters. They're similar, but they're different in that key aspects that you got to pay attention here, yeah.
I love that you bring that up. Let me throw two ideas here at you.
Go ahead.
And, like, I want to hear your reaction. So, I personally love the idea that if Nika dates back so long ago, and however he got turned into a devil fruit, could it be that Joy Boy and Luffy, like, aren't even the only incarnations? Could it be that there were, like, tens, if not hundreds of different Joy Boys? And the second thing is, could it be that, like, the Will of D, like, you have this rotation where sometimes a Luffy becomes Joy Boy, or becomes Nika, and sometimes a Blackbeard becomes Nika, and each time things go like they take liberation and freedom into very different directions, basically.
Are you talking about going back like tens of thousands of years through this cycle? Because
or maybe like thousands of years,
that's
yeah.
Fine. Yeah, I would like to learn more about the world even before the Void Century, so I'm 100% with that idea. I've always been like under the assumption with the way it's working right now, because there's been other people that have had the Sun God fruit before Luffy. Like that was kind of mentioned, and so like the idea is the Goro say the fruit keeps sneaking through their grasp and they'll never ever be able to like actually get their hands on it, right? But nobody's been ever able to awaken it before Luffy. It's like the perfect storm of stuff has to happen. Like the reincarnation of Joy Boy needs to be there. Also at the same time, the reincarnation of Shirahoshi has to be there, or like Poseidon has to be there, and so that's Shirahoshi right now in order to make all of this stuff work. And that's probably why part of the reason Roger laughed. It's like, man, all of this like let's say it's 1,000 years and Roger was 20 years too late for that. It was so close. It's like in 1,000 years is when this is going to happen. And Roger's like, okay, how long has it been? 980.
God.
I'm going to die in 6 months, man. Come on. Well, what are you going to do? Can't win them all. Yeah, like that would be great.
I think that would be such bad luck. I feel like one interesting thing also about this kind of like, which again, I think you and me, clearly, if you're a very big Game of Thrones fan, then you clearly, Song of Ice and Fire, then you clearly love morally gray characters and complex stuff.
Oh, yeah, the most morally gray.
Right? So I think the idea that potentially, like, I kind of love the idea of the One Piece world being stuck in this cycle of, you know, there's this tyrannical regime, this liberator comes, tears down the system, the world becomes good for a couple hundred years, power corrupts again.
Yep.
Everything goes to hell again, and the cycle repeats, and that's why Roger laughed, and that's why Rayleigh said, hey, maybe you guys are going to come to a different conclusion, but the way we see it is that we can tear down the world government, things are going to get better for a little while, and then it's going to all go to, it's going to get really bad again.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely is the overall idea. And I love stories that have that kind of twist to it, like the idea of a cycle. The idea that, like, this has happened like 100 times before this over the course of thousands of years, and it really gives new light on, like, what you said, Rayleigh said, like, hey, nobody's ever been able to find a solution to this. We certainly didn't have a solution to this. And maybe you guys can, maybe the future generations can, but we're stuck where we're at. Kind of like they realize the time they're in and just like, we can't do much about this. Also, how do you feel about the idea that Rayleigh and Shanks both got wicked drunk the entire time Vegapunk's broadcast was going on? Was there like an aspect of guilt with Rayleigh? Like maybe we could have done something, but we chose not to, maybe because we just realized it was futile, but we could have at least tried. You know, I
think that Rayleigh felt really called out. He was because Vegapunk was kind of like what all of us were like, why did you not just tell everyone? And he's like, if only you guys knew. And I don't want to deal with this right now.
I love that so much because I feel like in the hands of a lesser writer, the way that would be handled would be at like end of the story. Up like, why didn't Roger tell anybody about the One Piece?
I was like, good point.
Bullshit reason, we're just going to give in a couple of panels and just call it a day. No, Vegapunk called out the whole world on that. He's like, why didn't they say anything? Like, I could have done something with this. If they would have told me about it, I could have done something, you know?
I love that the implication almost seems to be that the truth is, it's kind of like with the Matrix, right? It's like almost like Rayleigh saying, we can't give the world the red pill because the truth is so messed up. Like, you're not going to deal with it. And it also kind of always puts this panel of Roger laughing into perspective for me, where I'm like, okay, was this actually funny, or were you guys just shocked out of your out of your minds? Like,
that might
this
be
is
more,
what the world is.
You get the reaction of like, oh man, this is insane information I'm getting. I don't know how to respond other than just
how to process
laugh.
it.
Yeah. I mean, and also going back to the Matrix example, I brought up that like, if I found out I was in the Matrix tomorrow, I don't think I'd freak out about it. But would that not destroy society? Like, society would be shredded after that. Like, if everybody was told this information at once and they believed it, then like society would shift insanely if that occurred.
I'm very curious. I feel like we as humans, we're like a lot, when it, like, surprisingly, I always feel like, or at least I'd like to think that when actual crises happen, that people come together and figure things out, but it's really hard to say, honestly.
Yeah, if not the Matrix, like a giant meteor is gonna hit the Earth in 5 days. Like, are we gonna come together and try to Armageddon this with like a movie, or are we just gonna panic and burn everything down? I have a hope for humanity, but I have a feeling it's just gonna be we're gonna panic and burn everything.
I feel like there's like a difference though between we're all gonna die in like a week.
Okay, and then
And like
that is
reality,
true. That's a kind of a false dichotomy. Yeah, that is.
and
not
like
that great,
base
but yeah.
reality is not what it seems to be, because then I feel like it's more about like digesting this ontological shock. Like, okay, it's not like the world is not, or reality is not what we all thought it was, but it's not changing how we live our day-to-day lives. So
yeah.
I do think that people like you and me were like, okay, we're gonna need a couple of years to digest this and figure out what this actually means. But in the meantime, like, I don't want, people setting my house on fire.
My day goes on the same, like.
Yeah.
But then there would be a lot of other people like nothing matters. So like we're just in a computer simulation. What's the point of it all? So like, yeah, there it is. Yeah.
I feel like I would like to believe at least like that despite what a dumpster fire, like the internet is and XD everything and everything, I would like to believe that in the end, like if something like that happened, people like you and me who really just want to live their life and like figure things out and maybe even draw like a certain sense of that like pancakes have never tasted so good after I learned this kind of vibe,
I learned
right?
that we're in the Matrix and it's all just ones and zeros.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
A lot of like existential discussions today on
real.
your podcast. This is setting a great standard for like future episodes.
I love it. Low standard. Yeah. If it's not philosophical,
no. You just have the moment in
gonna...
each episode with whatever guest. Like time to get existential.
Time to like fall into that hole for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like putting it slightly on a lighter topic.
Let's go.
Politics. Yeah. One thing I am very curious about is, what do you think Oda's ultimate ideal is for the One Piece world? Because at some point in the end of the story, he's going to be like, he's going to have to say, and the way to make a good world is democracy. The world to make a good world is total anarchy where everyone is free to do what they want. The right way to save the world is to have Vivi, the good person, be the dictator who like rules over the world.
So keep in mind, and also I think this is something Oda struggles with occasionally, because keep in mind the overall idea is that One Piece is supposed to like, it's in a magazine meant for like a lot of kids read One Piece, and it's supposed to be like, at the end of the day, a positive message, okay? So I have a way of thinking that Oda is going to leave this somewhat open-ended, and like we don't know what the answer to that
you think he
is.
Just evades?
No, not exactly. I think the way it's going to be structured is Dragon's Revolution is going to go through. And I want to talk about that for a moment. I'm going to circle back to that in a moment. Dragon's Revolution goes through, the Tenryubito are taken care of, slavery is abolished, and it's like the hope that this new system will be better than the previous system with the Tenryubito. However, there's also going to be a lot of talk about what if the new rulers, like the revolutionaries who become the rulers, what if they get corrupted? What happens then? And it's not, nobody has a direct answer to that. Nobody has like it's no big deal, that won't happen. No, it's like, that's a legitimate concern. We just have to hope that doesn't occur. And it kind of leaves us on a note of like, I hope things get better, but 50, 100 years from now, we might be down the same road again. Like maybe it does,
need
maybe
another
it
Luffy
kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm
like very curious because like the way I see it, there's almost no way. Like that's the problem with One Piece. It is like such a global phenomenon. And it has such, even as you say, even though it is published for kids theoretically, it has such deep political and like sociological implications and messaging. I feel like there's almost no realistic way to resolve the story where there's not going to be 60% of people up with like pitchforks.
No matter what way. I mean, this is just a standard with any work of fiction. I mean, what can you think of any modern, like when I say modern, I mean like in the last few decades, any work of fiction, like a long-running fantasy series that has ended and everybody was just on board with that? Like, there's always going to be people that are going to be like, that ending sucked, or it was too open-ended, or not open-ended enough, or something, or the message sucked. Like, I don't think Oda's going to have the ultimate message of, like, it's okay, guys. Vivi's in charge now, and everything's okay.
I will say, though,
that'll happen, but
Oda has had, like, a weird track record of being like, yeah, Crocodile was pretty bad for Alabasta, but the Nefertari family, they're cool. They're good kings. Or, Dressrosa, it's like, King Riku, he's a chill dude. He's a good king.
But Doflamingo took over, and
so he has this kind of weird track record of being like, if a good person is in charge, then monarchy is great.
And part of that, I feel like he does delve into politics. There's definitely that overall arcing theme in the story, but it's like, how far does he want to go with it? And I think that contributes to the success of One Piece, because like Hunter x Hunter, another example that Togashi's view for the world is really bleak, and he goes into a lot of detail with that. And I love Hunter x Hunter, but like I feel like Oda's like, he knows exactly when to draw the line of like, I'm not going to go that far into politics with it. I'll be here. There's enough that you could draw parallels to our world and in history and stuff like that. But I'm not going to go so far with it that you need to have like a degree to understand what's going on here. Okay. And then there's the idea that like ultimately also like editors will like contribute their opinions on this to Oda, and maybe that might sway him. I have no idea what the overarching like message here will be. Going back to Dragon Revolution.
Curious.
Before I forget this, so have you ever had a video that you thought of and you just scrapped it for whatever reason of like, I don't know if this is a bit too intense? So
tons of times.
Yeah. The one that really comes to mind with me was I was going to make a video about Dragon's full revolution. What's he actually going to do here? Because he wants to get rid of the Tenryubito system. I'm like, okay, like, what does that mean? Like, there's women and children that are Tenryubito here, Dragon. How are you going to tackle that? And I didn't even make the video because it was like, this is going to get way too much into, like, intense stuff here. But, like, that is a question. Obviously, Charlos needs to die. Roswell needs to die. But there are children and, like, babies that are Tenryubito. What's going to happen to them, Dragon? What are you going to do? You know, like, the elderly Tenryubito, like, that are not harmful to anybody. What's going to happen to them? Like,
that reminds me a little bit of Attack on Titan almost, where like the Eldians were like the suppressors, and then they became the suppressed, and it's like, again, you have the cycle again.
We just had, Murphy had a stream last week where we were talking about Attack on Titan and the ending of that story, so a lot of that stuff's fresh in my mind right now, but like, man, it's questions like that, like, how's Oda gonna handle this for a Shonen Jump, like, Shonen audience? Like, how's that gonna go?
I mean, I feel like he has already... I mean, I think he walks a really nice, like, you know, like, tight walk with it, where I feel like he has a good balance between, yes, like, if you read the chapter on its surface and you're, like 12 years old, you're just going to enjoy it for what is happening.
Yes, absolutely.
But he does also, I feel like, over time, like, the hidden layers have become less hidden, I will say.
I think they have to be, by the finale of this story, to really get the full message. Oda cannot afford to just, like, I'm gonna, like, you know, like, subtext this, like, a way that, like,
everyone else
lived
happily ever after.
No, if this is how we're ending this, like, Oda's, let's be honest here, his magnum opus, I don't think he's making another manga after this. Like, he's gonna, maybe some other, like, maybe,
no, like, Boruto, One Piece.
Yeah, no, well, there might be, but he'll be like an advisor for that. I don't think he'll be like drawing another series. Maybe he will. I don't know. Right. But like,
listen to me. What about a One Piece prequel, Void Century?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm 100%. I am sure in Shueisha right now there is something in a vault or in a safe that's like, this is the plan. After,
Adventures of Joy Boy.
The Adventures of Joy Boy, or a Roger prequel. I would love. That might be a bit of a too much of a rerun of Luffy's. I don't know, but like, you know, I would like to see more of this world, and there's going to be more of this world, definitely. But yeah, at the end here, Oda has to, like, and we've even seen this, like, characters didn't used to die as frequently in One Piece. We're getting steadily more death in One Piece. I mean, like,
did you see Morge getting obliterated?
Yeah. Oh, dude. You know what? Who died recently in One Piece that I feel like I really genuinely, like, not at the time, but like thinking back on it, I wish we would have gotten more of this character. Kind of was Izo. I was like, Izo just got off screen. Kind of. I'm like, kind of like.
Sure.
All right.
I think Kinemon was a really good death.
Well, you know, until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
I think the thing with One Piece deaths is I feel like it's a bit of a, you know, like two-sided sword in a way where I don't mind fake out deaths as much as some people. For example, Saul for me was always one of those deaths where it felt very likely that he, you know, like the fact that Aokiji froze him in the fire. It's like, sounds more like you're saving his life. Like that was before we learned about. So I was like, you're freezing him inside the Inferno. That seems more like saving him, right? Like, we
Yeah,
know
kinda.
Aokiji can stab people with ice,
And
right?
we know up until that point that he freezes people, and like Robin was frozen solid, and she was ultimately
So
fine.
I feel
it's
like Saul is probably the death that has for me the most legitimacy, being like foreshadowed to like not be actually
I
true.
don't mind really either. Like I feel like I've been almost conditioned because of the years of watching various anime and reading manga, and I'm familiar with all the tropes and everything. It's like pretty much anytime a character is quote unquote about to die, I'm like, I can't take that seriously with like any author because like it's fiction, it's fantasy.
Yeah.
Now I will say one thing that Oda does that I do love is that unlike Dragon Ball Z where we have spirits that can just come back and just talk to people whenever, death really shouldn't mean that much shit in Dragon Ball because Goku can talk to people whenever he wants. They afterlife is established. They know he's on King Kai's. They know where he's at. He's conscious and cognition of who he is as a spirit. We know this. It's established, okay? One Piece doesn't have that. We're never gonna, hopefully, we will never have, like, the Jedi Force ghost of Ace coming back, or Bellamere and being like, you know, you did okay, Nami. Now, I said this earlier, with the Heaven Layer, like, maybe you see, like, an illusion of a spirit, kind of like Black Maria gives the illusion of, like, Olvia and Clover and Salt. Might be okay, but not like the actual ghost of Ace comes back to hang out with
and
Luffy
talking to you.
Nothing like that. So when Oda kills a character off, he's like, I better be damn sure I'm doing this. And sometimes it comes out like, I don't want to actually kill off this character. Right.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I feel like the one big piece of criticism that I do agree with is if people really don't, important people don't stay dead, I do see the point that it does make things like you have a harder time believing someone actually, like, let's say Usopp got, I don't know, like stabbed through the chest by Blackbeard.
He got stabbed through the heart disease on an island and he died.
I would be like none of us would be like, oh no, Usopp, he's gonna be gone forever. We'd all be like, well, how's Oda gonna solve this?
Yeah, okay, with the exception being the Straw Hats. If I don't think Oda's gonna kill off any of the Straw Hats, but if he went that level with it, he's gotta write that check and cash it immediately. Like, that's how it works, okay?
I mean, I will say, I would be heartbroken beyond anything if any Straw Hat died, and I could not see it happening. But if you had Usopp die a brave warrior of the sea by saving Luffy's life, and that being the catalyst for Luffy actually, like going into like the final, like, I would be heartbroken. It would be like the craziest, writing this. It would be insane.
That is the one thing that Oda can now listen. I will be free to admit, because I got asked this question, like, what could Oda do that would make you stop reading One Piece? And the answer to that question is nothing. I'm reading it to the end. Even if Oda did something, even if he did something like killed off Zoro but brought him back in 2 chapters later, like, I wasn't really dead. I'd be like, okay, that sucks, but I'm still gonna read.
I'm not gonna stop reading.
I'm not gonna stop after 1,200 chapters, you know what I mean? It's like, but no, like, can you imagine that scene though? Double page spread, Luffy's about to die, Usopp jumps in front of him, gets his head cut off or something. That would be greater than the Gear 50. Not great.
That would be
like, the community would explode.
No, it would be legit. People would be angry, and then like 3 years later, it would be the most iconic and best scene of One Piece.
Yeah, that would be ranked as, like, simply put, that would be better than the nothing happened moment or Luffy's Gear 5th. That would be Usopp sacrifice #1 locked in, and Oda doesn't bring him back, doesn't do any bullshit with like, oh no, he actually only cut part of me, and I was able to like dodge out of
regenerate.
No. He's dead. All right. I don't want one of the Straw Hats to die, but the way we talk about it, it's like
it would hurt, but like from a writing perspective and the stakes it would give to the story, it would be insane. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to like side characters, like I think Pell should have died. He serves no purpose to still be alive.
Yeah.
Pound, I felt like Oda just wanted to have a nice happy ending for Lola, and he just didn't kill off Pound. In that case, don't have Oven with a Naginata on fire about to cut his head off. Just omit that scene. I don't know why you had to be there. That was a kill shot, like 100%.
He just like missed or something.
Yeah, they're side characters, so whatever. Pedro's sacrifice was cool. I was about to say,
Pedro's sacrifice, one of, I mean, it's not in my top 10 One Piece moments, but it's like,
not mine either, but like, yeah.
But insanely memorable, and it made this character that otherwise didn't have this much of an impact, made him like immediately elevated him to like a different level completely. Whereas like if Pedro had survived, that would like no one would be talking about it anymore, basically, right? Like it would be.
And then, we have flashbacks, and I'm also okay with at one point if Oda wants to do, like, the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like, the images in the sky or something. If he wants to do, like, Pedro's in the sky with Ace hanging out, like, okay, yeah, fine, you could do that. It's, like, artistic interpretation of death.
Or the... Did you read JJK?
Okay, very scattershot with JJK, but I don't mind spoilers. You go ahead and say whatever.
Okay, no, maybe I'll be careful. I think I put like a JJK spoiler by accident into a One Piece video.
Let me tell you about JJK. I read the last 6 chapters without reading like the majority of the series. I do not.
That is exactly the wrong way to read. What you do is read everything except the last 6 chapters.
Yeah, I get that impression. I got that impression. Yeah.
Like, speaking of that, like, since we talked about the ending of One Piece, it makes me really scared how many long-form stories that I really love don't manage to hit the landing. Naruto did not stick the landing. Bleach did not stick the landing. Now JJK did not stick the landing. I'm not sure if you, like, at all watched or read Oshinoko, which I like is a really, really cool show. Did not stick the landing either. Like, they all kind of rushed out of it, or like weird twists at the end. So I'm like, I have this fear now.
I've talked about this with a lot of people, like in my personal life and like online too. Like, manga endings are hard to land a lot of times, like, and I don't know if it's just like, editor interference or like, because sometimes with Shueisha it really feels like, hey, you gotta end this like 6 chapters, let's go.
Yeah, why?
And it's like, I understand,
I'm always like, why?
You want to get the new series in and whatever, it's a business, I get it, but like, you need to give the author some time to breathe here, you know what I mean? You can't just like hit the gas pedal at the end of it.
Do you feel that's it though? Because I feel like with stories like Bleach or like, I'm like Milk. Like I like if I was an editor at Sui, I would be like, yo, make it 100 chapters. Like make it extra long because people are gonna drool over this. Yeah.
But maybe in the like no, it's like this is a new series that needs to come in and you need to like the ratings are down for this or whatever, or like there's not as many people reading this, so just end it. And it's like, with Bleach, you definitely felt that. From 680 to 681, Kubo hits the gas pedal big time with this. Naruto's
that was JJK.
Ending, yeah, JJK's ending, yeah. From what I liked the last chapter, that had, like, that nice little side arc that didn't...
That's out of nowhere, I guess, yeah.
But, yeah... I mean, I feel like with One Piece, they're going to give more leniency with that because of just who Oda is, and it's the most popular manga in the freaking world. So it's like, okay, Oda, you can end this kind of however you need to at this point.
Yeah.
But
I do want to get into... Yeah, that's actually really cool because I do want to get with you a little bit into like how long you think Elbaf's going to be and like, looking a bit into the future of One Piece. Before we get to that, let me quickly ask you, do you feel like the big problem that a Bleach, a Naruto, maybe a JJK also had... do you feel like the decisive element here is pre-planning? Where like with One Piece, I have the hope that Oda has his story, he had it figured out from the start, and so like even if he expands it and blows it up a bit, like the core structure always is gonna make sense, and things are gonna make sense in retrospect, referencing, I wonder if like with Kubo or like even with Naruto, like like there were clearly at some point they were kind of like I guess next this thing happens question mark kind of like
there were definitely instances like there was like, oh, that's kind of a Deus Ex Machina moment that happened in Bleach with the arrow is like the big one. They're like, oh, this was never really mentioned before, and it just takes away all the main villain's powers and then Ichigo takes him out. Then there's like My Hero, the way that ended, where you definitely get the impression Horikoshi, and we know this for certain, Horikoshi wanted to do way more because with the Tankobon release, he just came out with like a 70-chapter final chapter called More. Just, this is more, and this is here you go. And it really gives you the impression of like, this was not something he just came up with last minute, like after the series ended, maybe I should do this. That seems like that's what I wanted to do, but maybe there were other restrictions on why I couldn't fit that in, so... I'll release this later or something like that. So I think it's like both things. But yeah, there's examples of both.
I do have hope that I think pre-planning your story just should by default make it a lot easier to stick that landing. Because again, even like I think there's a difference with what we talked about earlier. Like there's a difference whether you agree with the moral messaging at the end. I feel like that's one thing, but then like does the story in itself make cohesive sense? Is like that's like two different things, right?
That's what's more important. Like, I'm okay if at the end of the story I'm like, wow, that was a bleak ending, or that ending the morality of who won is kind of questionable. I'm a dude that wanted the Night King to win at the end of Game of Thrones. Because that would have, like, okay, we can do that and maybe go into a sequel series of where the Night King rules over Westeros and be like, shit, all right, that, like, evil wins. Like, there you go. Where does that lead us down that road? I'm way more a fan of, like, does this make cohesive sense in terms of the story and the plot and, like, the tone you're going for, rather than, like, oh, I don't agree with that happening, but let's see what happens here. Let's see where this goes next. Yeah.
I think I'm very curious about that too. Now, like what I already mentioned earlier, what's your vibe? Because people keep asking me, you know, how long do you think Elbaf is going to be? And then we have everything from people like, this is going to be, you know, this is just going to be a Zoe kind of like 30 chapter arc. We're out of here. Meanwhile, I'm like on the completely other end. I personally feel like this is going to be a Wano. We're going to be like 4 years in Elbaf. But like, what's your personal?
Well, I mean, like Manu, we already got confirmation on that. Louis Arnault said, don't stay that long in Elbaf. So like, I'm saying 15 chapters tops, and we got to get moving. We got stuff to do.
Get right out of here.
Yeah, no, from what we all understand with Oda at this point, like, there's no way this could be a Zoe level arc. Like, I'm thinking bare minimum, we're talking whole cake, which would put us somewhere in the 70s. I would be okay with that. I think you could fit a lot of stuff in there. But, like, if we're going to do, like, a Dressrosa, Wano kind of situation, 100 plus, go for it, man. I'm not going to complain about more One Piece. Who wants to rush this? Who wants to be like, come on, guys, let's get through with Elbaf and get to Laugh Tale already? No, fuck that.
I'm like,
Lodestar,
for
50
real.
Chapter arc. Let's go. Like, I want to see it.
Give me 100 chapters of just Roadstar. There's just nothing there, but like, we're just exploring it.
We landed here. We know we have to find the 4 road poneglyphs. We already knew that. Okay, well, there we are.
If I got to pick, I would be like, let's spend like 30, 40, 50 chapters setting up here on like the main tree. We kind of explore a bit the underworld. We get the Loki line, and then we just move up to the Heaven Layer, and suddenly we move. Oh, there's Sky Islands here. We're gonna have another Sky Island sub arc and something. And at some point, you know, like I'm like, give me. The only thing I feel like that is a bit of a sign that it could be not as crazy long is that the Holy Knights, again, bringing things back to evil Twin Shanks. I feel like that they have arrived already could be a sign that we're moving into stuff a little bit earlier, but it doesn't have to. And again, I feel like Elbaf has been set up for such a long time, and it's like quite literally the biggest island in One Piece. If you don't count the red line.
By just the scale and size of it. Question, and I mean, like, we don't know from the last chapter, but like, why didn't they just, if they could just invade Elbaf anytime, why didn't they warp in like earlier? Like, that's another big one. Like, okay, God's Knights can they warp anywhere in the world? That's scary,
which is,
you know,
Is it like, again, is this even with the summoning circles, like it's still not 100% clear also if this is Emu doing it or if they themselves just have these powers,
to do it,
right?
Or if Eam is like lending them their power, or Garland lend it. Can the Gorosei, like, Eam subcontracts his abilities out to the Gorosei, and the Gorosei can then subcontract it again out to other people. You know, by the way, the introduction of the crazy yokai monsters and the summoning powers, I think that fits fine in the story. That in order to, like, because otherwise, how the Straw Hat's going to travel all the way to Marijois to fight the Gorosei? It's like, we had it, and it made perfect sense. And there's limitations to it, too. We know there's, like, limits to it. Yeah.
And it also makes it a lot easier to control the entire world that's flooded by water if you yourself can just instant travel.
Teleporting, like, Oda's always been there. I mean, we have the warp fruit now with Augur, but that clearly has a range, and Oda didn't reveal it until, like, well over 1,000 chapters into the story. So it's like more into the end game. It's like, I'll get more into the fast traveling devil fruits.
Yeah. One thing that I'm also kind of curious about is, did you get the impression that, because once the hockey knot that MF had from Joy Boy, once that got unleashed, it almost felt like the Gorosei were like knocked back to Marijois. So like that kind of made me wonder, were they even there in their full forms? Or was it more like they were like
final form yet?
Or were they just like projecting almost?
Yeah,
you know,
I have no idea. Like, I guess the idea, because Mars got sent back first before the hockey explosion even happened, the hockey nuke went off, right? Maybe like, you get hit hard enough with enough hockey, it undoes the summoning, and that's why Saturn remained, because he's the only one there. And so the other ones just all got hit point blank.
Oh yeah,
with it,
exactly,
they got
exactly.
sent back
Because Saturn remained, right? So yeah, I thought
Saturn
that was really
there
interesting.
because he didn't actually he traveled there normally on a ship. Right?
Yes, he was physically there. So it almost makes me kind of wonder, like, oh, even if you manage to kill, like, maybe he just resets and, you know, like, is like, okay, yeah, I took damage and I need to recover now for like a month, but I'm still alive.
That seems like, I mean, they kind of already just did that, because I don't feel like that whole teleportation shenanigans, that takes some out of them, or takes out of Eames like power or something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why didn't Saturn just like, oh, they got knocked back, let me just summon them, like Kuchiyose no Jutsu, summon them again, like they didn't. So it was, now they didn't show any like exhaustion on them. I loved when they got back to the Room of Authority and Mars was just sitting on the like couch, kind of looking like, really guys, there were all 5 of us and we still all messed this up, seriously, like kind of that. But yeah.
I kind of like the one thing, I feel like that is not as likely now anymore, but I always like the idea that potentially the Gorosei, like their demon form was their actual form and their human form was like the transformation.
I like that too. I think it's probably the reverse is the most likely. Do you think they're devil fruits, or do you think they're yokai? I'm thinking they're just actual yokai at this point. Yeah.
I feel like they're not regular devil fruits, at least. No. So the idea that I had, and again, it's less likely potentially now with Garling and also like how the Holy Knights travel, but like the idea that I really liked is that potentially they are yokai that just like look for fresh hosts, and that's how they're alive for such a, like, that's why they're alive since the Void Century, where like they've just been like, oh, my body got old and died, but now, you know, that's, or like my body got killed, I'm just gonna find a new host. With it. Yeah. Basically.
I mean, if water could kill them, you know, Saturn going on a boat all the way to Egghead, if that's all it took, like that would be like all that would take for this guy to die is if the boat gets blown up and he falls in the water before he could transform, like that's it. So it's like, yeah, I don't think, and there was a shot where we saw Saturn falling, like about to hit the water at Egghead, and then like the next chapter he was back on the shore again. I don't know how they're going to interpret that in the anime. But, like, the implication is you can't just... It's the same thing with Kaido. Why don't you just drop Kaido in the water to kill him? You know, it's like...
Exactly. I mean, and to me, it kind of felt like the fact that he, like, does, like, jump over the water, it kind of felt like almost... Like, not 100%, but almost, like, strong confirmation that, like, water does not affect them as, like, regular Devil Fruit users. I mean, I personally kind of love the idea... I mean, we're going all over the place and then always returning to topics. I love it. Like, going back to the Bible thing, I kind of like love the idea that potentially the devil fruits, like if Oda actually flipped everything on its head and it's kind of like the devils are the real good guys, right, in the end, and Luffy, Lucifer, the fallen sun god, you know, like he's actually the good guy. So if the devil fruits are the powers of the devils that got defeated, the good people, whether that's the Lunarians or the ancient king or whatever, right? Like maybe these demon fruit or whatever these transformations are, maybe like they're actually like the gods, the like, and like everything has been flipped in the One Piece world, right?
I mean, the idea that Eam might be like the god of the ocean, like she is Mother Nature, as it were, and she's like royally pissed off that these devil fruits exist and they're wandering around, and maybe Eam Narona was a real person that the sea goddess like possessed and just took over Eam Narona, and like that's not really him at that point. Uses the name, but beyond that is like a vessel kind of situation, right?
I mean, if you kind of like one very, I guess, easy to make conclusion about Nika would be that they possibly obviously were Lunarian and came down from the moon, right? And so if you think about, okay, if devil fruit powers are tied somehow to the Lunarians, like potentially, like what if whatever Imu is or whatever Imu is possessed by, what if that power is older than the Lunarians, and then the Lunarians kind of came down to the One Piece planet, you know, they brought their powers with them and
they're in the land of the gods too, so
and subdued almost the existing powers of the One Piece planet. Like that could also be interesting.
I have an idea about Eam right now, and I have no idea if this will hold any water, but like that giant sword, right? Like, it looks like something, like you said, like something huge has to wield it, like the Onigashima skull, or the giant creatures we saw at Thriller Bark, who, honestly, like, the shapes of those things kind of looked like Eam, and Eam can get huge. We've seen that from when they fought Sabo. So what if one of those things, what if those are the sea gods of the One Piece world? Maybe there's more than one. One of them broke off and decided, like, I'm going to go down into the mortal realm and rule that as the world government. That's Eam. and yeah, maybe one of those
Florian
wielded the sword at
triangle
some point. Yeah.
monsters.
Yeah, that's exactly the idea. So perhaps that's
I
even
will-
species. Yeah.
That could be so cool. I mean, one thing I will say about the sword in Elbaf, because my first reaction was like the same as everyone else's, like, oh, giant sword in Elbaf, giant
That's
sword
awesome.
in Wano. Like, and again, this could be a classic case of Oda's like size scaling going completely wrong. But if you actually do the maths, like the sword on Elbaf is probably like 4 times the size of like the sword on Onigashima.
Oh yeah, it's way bigger. It's way bigger. And I always honestly just got to the point where that was just a lawn decoration for Kaido at some point. Like I don't even know. Like let's say the giant like was a real giant that could like exist at one point, like the ancient giant skull. Like there's no that sword would be like a letter opener to that.
Yeah,
giant,
too
probably.
small. Yeah,
it'd be like this. It'd be the size of a toothpick. You know, 'cause that's just the skull is that big.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Where the sword on Elbaf, when you really think of like the fact that, okay, like correct me if I'm, because you're geography, so correct me if I'm wrong here. But in my head, Elbaf tree hits the sky like the cloud level.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't that mean technically that the sword is almost as tall as the red line?
Yeah, I mean, like, I honestly, so if we're going along with the logic, they're in the sun layer right now, and that the island cloud can exist there, and it's like, is that sun layer like 7,000 meters up? Because it's cool if it is, but there's questions with that. And then, like, if you go with the Burka theory, like you go up all the way higher, it might be higher than 10,000 meters. The red line is not 10,000 meters tall.
Exactly.
From sea level to the top. So it's like, I guess that sword would be the size of the red line.
Which is insane. Like, again, which kind of brings me back to the idea that potentially the Adam tree is just like not the original, but maybe like a sapling or something that got like replanted.
Like that, yeah. Like this might be a thing where like the Eve and the Adam tree are growing out of the center of the planet, and it's like some weird stuff like that. And like those were their first, like when Loki said it was the primordial land, the underworld, that really was the first piece of land to ever exist on the planet. It was a super ocean before that, kind of like with Pangea in our world, like how it was like one piece of land and then just a giant ocean through the rest of it. And then I don't know, stuff happened and the earth rose out of the earth or something. I don't know if Oda's going to delve into the creation story of the planet itself.
I do feel like we're going to get some stuff. I feel like the red line and the grand line stuff, like it feels too artificial to be natural.
Yeah, the red line definitely feels like it was put there by something.
There's like we've so for a different video we're talking about. I'm gonna tell you something after we finish this call because I don't want to spoil it because this is going in a video that comes out after this podcast. But I've like found something cool about both these things. But yeah, like another interesting thing is like we kind of talked about like in the team brainstormed a little bit about why the One Piece world is so weird and like we had like interesting ideas. We're like, okay, well, is the One Piece planet a Dyson sphere, and is there like a little star inside of it or something, right? Like, is that something where
that's wild,
where you have like actually like going more into the sci-fi direction of things, where is all that energy coming from and so on and so forth. And what if in the model of Ohara, like that's not moons, but it's actually like actual planets, right?
Yeah, I think, so when I was talking with Artur, we talked about that, and he just basically, it's probably a geocentric model of like the universe, because otherwise it just doesn't make sense that there would be like 20 moons bouncing around. Because we haven't seen. Yeah, go ahead.
Except if the One Piece planet is the star.
It could be that too. It's just that like clearly the One Piece planet has one moon, especially like through most of the story it wouldn't have been that relevant, but when we started getting to the Sulong with the minks and everything, I think it would have been referenced that the planet has more than one moon. And no, there seems to be just the one. So
there is a. I'm gonna also share this with you after the call. But there is a really crazy fact for another thing, like another thing about the One Piece world. That's probably gonna blow your mind. I'm gonna share it with you later, and people are gonna have to wait. I think we have that video coming up in January.
The feature presentation of Ohara's new video. Yeah.
Exactly. Another really interesting thing. I mean, again, like bringing things back a little bit to like the big picture thing, and we talked about the cycle thing, and as you say, like stories where you have these like cyclical, time, like every 1,000 years, like the same cycles continue. Have you read The Wheel of Time?
No, Daniel Green has like recommended it, and Murphy's recommended it. I have not got around to it yet.
You're gonna love it. It's so good. I'm gonna give you which is not really like it's not a central like it's a spoiler, but not a spoiler
You're
really
fine.
central
You're
to
good.
the story.
Yeah.
So and the books have been out for like I think 15
Oh yeah,
years.
it's
So I
like
think
the
it's hopefully
90s
fine.
or like 2000s or something.
So
yeah.
without like this is completely unrelated to the actual story of the books, but basically in the world of the Wheel of Time, there's like different ages.
Okay.
And we're in the third age. I think it's been a while since I think it's the third age. And then basically what happened is that like we learned that in the past people were way more powerful and had all this crazy magic, and then they found basically like they broke the world almost. Like they were insanely powerful, could do all these crazy things, and then they found this new power source, which was then basically like the bad guy, like the prison of the Dark One. They found this like new power source that they drilled a hole in, and it turns out it was this imprisoned being that then broke the world and like tainted everything with evil. What we learn throughout with like it's like little clues throughout the entire show where they find like little artifacts and like symbols of like like before the world broke. We actually find out that it's very and this is not never confirmed in the story, but it's basically strongly hinted at that originally this is our world. This like magical fantasy world is actually our world where like humanity, like they find like logos of like companies and stuff, right? Like that basically sounds like, like
that sounds exactly like that's where it was going in the series. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we find out that like humanity, it was our world in the future. Like we got more and more technologically advanced, found all these technologies that basically ended up being kind of like magic, right? Like incorporated into like human genes also. And then we kind of like got too greedy, like dug too deep, found this like other evil thing, and that broke the world. And then like we're now living in this post-apocalyptic world where parts of this like ancient technology that humanity once had now is kind of like magic, right?
I see.
And I'm like once we hit once Vegapunk's message hit, I was like, is this the exact same thing?
I have not read Wheel of Time, but that is like a premise that I have seen many times throughout like the kind of fiction. The idea that's like, oh yeah, technological advancements lead to destruction, and then now it's like a post-apocalyptic world that you're living in. You don't know it. There was one way back in the day I remember reading. It was called the Transsail Saga, which was like the same thing.
So good.
Yeah.
Love it.
Gary
I've read
Paulson.
it.
Yeah. Middle school was like, it started with Hatchet. And he also, for those of you that don't know, the guy that wrote Hatchet, like the wilderness survival one, also wrote basically an isekai. And it's fucking good.
It's actually like low-key. I mean, it's been like what 15 years or something, or 20
I
even
haven't
longer,
read it since
but
middle school. It's so
like 20 years, but so good.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that could be something like that the One Piece world? I mean, we don't have to go so far as to say that the One Piece world is our world in the future, but like this entire
I don't think Oda's going to go that route with it, but I will like to see like when we explore the Ancient Kingdom and we find out finally what the name of it was, which by the way, why did Vegapunk just say the name of the kingdom in the message? Like that one is something he should know. But anyway, what is the power source? I mean, the Mother Flame, but it might have been something like Vegapunk reproduced the Mother Flame, but it's probably not like the exact thing. It's not as good. So like the original spark of that, like I don't know, like it's I think it just goes back to nuclear power. Like he figured out like the spark of the sun, like nuclear fusion or something. That's what the Ancient Kingdom figured out, and that's what powered everything. Yeah, the ancient weapons and all that.
Do you feel like there's a chance at all that the Ancient Kingdom was the Grand Line?
Like the whole thing?
Like the whole thing, which explains why all these islands are.
Although,
all the islands connected to it are across the Grand Line, which then got flooded.
And then that got flooded, and then it's magnetic, so the magnets would like point to like different elevations on like the same island. I don't know.
It's also interesting, like with the calm belt, like why, like it almost feels like a defense mechanism almost.
Yeah, kind of. So like we're gonna learn about all this. I thought it would be interesting if the name of the kingdom was something related to pirate, like Kaizoku, because like the word pirate, because Vegapunk said. Joy Boy was the first pirate. Wouldn't it have been funny if the word pirate didn't even exist back then, really? And then the country was called Kaizoku, and then the world government won, and they labeled everybody that was part of this country as criminals, and that
pirates?
the name stuck, like Kaizoku country or something. That stuck
pirate
until
country.
Now. Yeah,
that could be cool.
Yeah,
I was like
was
thinking maybe Binks could be cool.
Yes, Binks Sake. Yeah.
I'm not sure if
Um,
you've seen that video. Like I did like a breakdown of the Japanese actually, and I mean, I like yeah, I made like this whole
I
video where
I've
it kind
seen
of
the one where you talk about the song and it's like there's a mention to like
yes.
the underworld in it, and I'm like,
Oh
I never.
no, it's
Yeah.
it's a new one. It's a new one I
Okay.
did like
Okay.
a month ago or
All
something.
right.
And basically, one thing I realized is in being like and it only made sense with the knowledge of Joy Boy and the sea levels rising. There are these phrases in it where like there's the word song appears 3 times, and it's the song of the birds, the song of the ship, and the song of the deep ocean. And I'm like, sounds like the ancient weapons. And then it actually says twice when these are mentioned, it says the don. Like don is like with like one
Yeah.
hit,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
icho. Don to icho uto. Like it actually like the song like the literal translation is let's sing with the dawn, like with the dawn. But if you actually correlate it to the ancient weapons, icho means 100 meters, pretty much precisely. And since we know that the world sank like 200 meters, and it happens twice in that song, I was like, so I kind of
So
like
you're thinking like Bink is clearly a dude that existed at one point, wrote
I
the
think
song
that
in reference to this. I mean, you know what blew my mind? For the longest time, I thought Bink Sake was an actual song that Oda was just incorporating into One Piece.
no.
When I found out he wrote the lyrics, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, okay, this is some deep lore shit right now.
Oh,
Like, yeah.
I think what it is that it's the story of Joy Boy's life.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
it's
the
something
first
like that.
verse talks about Joy Boy being born in the ancient kingdom, then having some sort of conflict with like some person there, which could be Emu, could be like more this like Blackbeard foil to him, and he leaves. He sets out. He's the first pirate that leaves. He leaves. He sets out to sea. He finds the first. Oh, sorry. Before he sets out, they find Uranus, the song of the birds, right? So they find that before he leaves, and then with Uranus, I think it's the one time that the sea levels don't rise with that song, right? That's the only one. So he's in the ancient kingdom. He finds Uranus, and then afterwards something happens where he leaves the ancient kingdom, but Uranus stays behind, which would make sense. Why then maybe if the ancient kingdom, like the 20 kingdoms were potentially part of the ancient kingdom or something, why they would have it. He sets out, becomes a pirate, gets like basically like expelled almost, right? Goes into exile and then finds all these other places around the Grand Line, right? Finds all these like other islands around the world, and then finds the other ancient weapons, uses Pluton either by accident or for whatever, and suddenly floods the world 100 meters. And people are like, yo, what, like, and I thought that would be interesting if Joy Boy was actually the one who either accidentally or on purpose actually flooded the world the first time.
I like that because I had it was a joke I made years ago when, like, imagine if they find the One Piece and it's just a big red button. Luffy would be pushing the shit out of that before it would even be like what it even is or what it even does, right?
Yeah.
And the idea of Joy Boy being very similar, like, I accidentally fired off an ancient weapon that flooded the world. I could see Luffy doing that by accident, so I could see Joy Boy doing that by accident. Yeah.
And like basically the idea there would be like, and then basically it would be Joy Boy using Pluton and Poseidon against Emu in that final fight where like Emu uses Uranus, and then the world floods again because of that fight.
So
with
the idea that the ancient weapons already existed before the ancient kingdom, they didn't build them. They were
that would have been my idea.
A long cycle going on and back. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you're aware of this. One thing that I always found very fascinating is like a big translation error with One Piece is that we have the ancient weapons and the ancient kingdom. But the ancient kingdom in Japanese is actually called the Great Kingdom.
It's not the same kanji. Yeah.
And the ancient weapons are actually ancient. So I always had the impression that the ancient weapons might have predated the Great Kingdom, the ancient kingdom. And
I would
like
love
maybe
things
we're
to
like
be explored that way, like the Age of Heaven and like all the stuff we know that happened before the Void Century, and like Shandora existed before the Void Century. Robin was reading all this history stuff.
Right.
I want to see what happened before that because we have to know at least a little bit about that. Because we can't just do the Void Century flashback. We start our tale in the Ancient Kingdom. It's like, wait, no. You need some context. How did this get here? Like, where did they get to this point?
Literally the video series I'm putting out this December. Yeah.
There you go.
But the idea with that Bing Sake song was like, okay, if Joy Boy, because even if Joy Boy was a good person, maybe himself, like, trying to fight the world government, or what then became the world government, like, if he himself was also partly at fault for flooding the world, what if, like, part of the reason, like, why Roger and Rayleigh didn't know what the right answer was that, like, yes, you kind of need the ancient weapons to defeat the world government or change the world, but in the process, you're gonna run the risk of just, like, flooding everything yourself. Yeah.
So what if it turns out to be this weird messed up thing where it's like the world government is incredibly corrupted and incredibly messed up and slavery exists, but it's this weird thing where they justify it by like, yeah, but you guys don't understand. Like the alternative is even worse.
Everything floods.
Like, yeah, and it's just like literally we're the only thing keeping that from happening, and so yeah, we're gonna be corrupted, and we're gonna.
There is an anime, I keep forgetting the name, where that's exactly the premise of the anime, where they defeat the bad guy, and then turns out the bad guy was the only person who was keeping all the aliens from invading
Mistborn, if we're talking about novels.
Yes, let's
like,
go.
That's
Thank you.
Fucking Mistborn. Like,
let's go. Thank you. I was like, what was that story?
Yeah, where they beat the Lord Ruler at the end. And it's like, you don't understand. Killing me makes it even worse. I'm like,
yes, exactly.
Right, why didn't you tell anybody? But all right, it's fine.
So I kind of wonder if that could be something.
All right, yeah.
Good luck.
Oh man. So everybody look forward to that new series. There you go.
Do you have any like pet theories that you feel like something where you feel like this must be true, but you don't have like that like evidence for it?
I've talked about a lot of them like so far, like throughout the course of our conversation. I can't think of anything like Uranus is on the moon. Like that's the big one. That like that's not really something crazy. Like a lot of people figured that out. At least I think, because God of the sky is like
right. Also, do you think that it was not Uranus that was used to sink Lucia? Or did it take it? Did they bring it from the moon and then put it back?
Or it might be something like, okay, yeah, that's right, because like there was a theory for a while there I had that like the actual ancient weapon is on the moon. There might have been some like copy of it built, but then we later found out with information we learned from Egghead that that's not the case. That was Uranus. So I guess they might have found it on the moon. Who knows? I just really want Eneru to come flying down on an ancient weapon. This is the thing, Manu. Here's the idea. You guys have a team where you sit down and you come up with these theories. I'm sitting in the back with a brick that's like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Eneru came flying down through it?
Yo, I'm sure Barry is supportive, though.
Like, and that's the difference between our channels. That's how we do things.
I will say I like both approach. I have like a lot of, because obviously like I mean that's how I did it for 90% of my YouTube career too. But I will say it is like great because like obviously we all don't have the time to always sit down with like other YouTubers every time and like brainstorm all of our ideas together, right? So it is very like gratifying, I would say, to like have other people who are like so passionate about One Piece, and you can just like sit for 5 hours in a Zoom call and be like, wait.
Wait, now, hold on a second. Now, the one thing I will say, this isn't like a theory or anything. This is just something I personally want by the end of the story. Whatever the One Piece turns out to be, I want to have the same reaction that Roger did. I want to read the page, like click on the page and see what it is, and then I just want to gut laugh for like for like 5 minutes straight. If Oda can do that, then mission accomplished. There it is. Yeah.
Unless it is really that, like what we said earlier, that like really tragic, like
it's like okay.
Tear.
Holy
we're all super fucked. Yeah.
And then the next panel is just Oda personally writing like, "Yep, I went there. End of chapter. 2-week break."
Oh, yes. Okay, this one I wanted to ask you too. So this is something I just talked a little bit about, the Bragman and the Explorers in like a video I did. One interesting thing I had, so I found like another panel where like the ship, the Sand Bliss, falls from the sky.
Yes.
And we get a quote from this physicist called Willie.
Yeah. There was a dude in a stream that just mentioned that like a few days ago. Like I forget his name, but like the idea that there was like Oda used to do a lot more quotes back in the day.
And I think I read somewhere, again, this was the Japanese internet again, but I read the idea that potentially every time we get a narrator telling us stuff about like the islands and stuff. That this is always Bragman being quoted basically by Oda all throughout this. Like, oh, Dressrosa is a country of, many, different
like that's the
every
narrator basically is Louis Arnaud the entire time. Yeah.
Well, or at least the narrator whenever it comes to descriptions, basically.
Yeah. Willie Gallen, that was his name. Yeah, Willie Gallen.
Willie Gallen, yeah, the physicist, which is kind
of a weird thing to reference, yeah. Everything that
also, I feel like that quote, I don't have it in front of me, but I do remember that the quote was something about like dreams and people's wildest imaginations, like people can imagine coming true, and I was like, that's literally what Vegapunk said.
Yeah,
about devil fruits.
Yeah, I love the fact that and it makes me feel like a lot of times because Oda did the Louis Arnaud stuff and the Willie Gallen stuff 20 years ago in the manga. And it makes me feel like at a certain point, I guess he just forgot about that stuff. He just doesn't do it anymore. That's okay, though, because it's been so long ago. It's fine. No, he hasn't forgotten. He hasn't forgotten. It's just not relevant for this point yet, or rather, I'll bring it back when it's important, and he did. So I think Oda has to go back and reread his own story a few times to remember, before Elbaf, let me just read through Little Garden again and see okay, yeah, let's just make sure. Let me just make sure.
Suddenly in the final fight against Imo and the Gorosei, we get the Doriki system back.
Yeah. No. It's the Straw Hats squaring off against the Gods Knights, the Gorosei and Im, and then Fukuro just walks in like, give me a second.
The numbers
Im's
come up.
Doriki is 10. Okay, bye. And then he just leaves.
That'd be so good.
I'm going to make a video about that, by the way. That one time One Piece did power scaling. The one time I tried to implement power levels in the story.
And I just immediately went away right again. It was also so funny because that scaling system also had no context whatsoever of what it was actually measuring.
I think it was Oda just one part parody and because he likes Dragon Ball. I mean, he a lot of the mangakas were inspired by Toriyama and everything. So I think that was just Oda dipping his toe in what if I had power levels in One Piece? How would people respond to that?
And then he was like, nah, I don't think so.
You can't even do it. You can't even do it properly. It was mentioned it was just physical power because devil fruit abilities, especially Paramecia's, are so wacky. You can't quantify that with a number, and just attempting to would be dumb.
And I will say, I feel like bounties are a much more fun power scaling system anyways, because they do take other things like knowledge and, even just knowledge and intention and stuff into account as well, which I personally really like.
Yeah. Hey, the Straw Hats should go after Akainu's bounty. They could do that now. They could totally do that. Hey, I wish we knew. Into Buggy and get them.
I wish we knew. Oh,
Nami would love that.
I want to see that video from you because I was thinking about making it, but then I was like, I don't think I have enough there quite yet. But I would be so curious to actually learn about who in the One Piece world is actually collecting bounties at this point. Who is coming for Luffy's bounty at this point?
I will make a scattershotted Tekking version of that. You make a more well-suited, scripted, structured video on that. But the idea of bounty hunters in One Piece. Let's talk about them. I am going to probably start the video with that exact sentence. So,
because it's almost such a yes, you can say, okay, well, the bounty's so unrealistic high that kind of symbolizes just how strong you are. But I would imagine you just had really randomly this neutral character, kind of like a Zoro, but he didn't join Luffy, who's just on the same level as the Holy Knights. It's just this one scary dude no one really knows anything about, who's just hunting Yonkos occasionally and just
We kind of learned about this because I always thought Fujitoro was like that. He was a really strong civilian living out in the mountains somewhere. So not quite that, but he was a military general essentially. And then Aramaki also really crazy powerful. So somewhere out there in the world, there could be a wandering mercenary, works alone, really badass, and
man marked by flames.
Yeah, maybe, and legitimately could be. And he's just he's really, really strong, but he doesn't want to be a pirate. He doesn't want to be a revolutionary. He doesn't want to be a Marine. But, he'll
I feel
go
like there's
after,
a lot
the
of
big names.
There's a lot of fun videos like these you could make.
yeah,
like
there's so many
why don't we drown more people in One Piece?
Talk about what I've talked about One Piece for longer than I talked about Bleach. Now I did Bleach for 5 years. I've been doing One Piece for 8 years now.
8 years,
and it's like it just like you never run out of stuff to talk about. You never do.
Legitimately, yeah. Yeah, I feel like the drowning thing is so interesting. The fact
the idea like they captured Kaido so many times. Why don't they just like lower him into the ocean and just kill him? Like why didn't they, why did they do that? Yeah.
Kind of curious. I'm like there's like interesting questions. And I feel like the fact that like Oda does pull like it's not the rubber fruit, it's the Nika fruit. I'm like even wondering like the fact like if you eat more than one devil fruit, you'll explode. Like we've never seen it happen. Legitimately.
I made a video about that years ago. Like we've never actually seen that happen. So like the fear of that alone keeps people, because it's so rare to find more than one devil fruit. Just to find one devil fruit is so rare. Now, if you're part of the government and the Marines, that's different because they have a whole organization looking for them, right? But if you're just a dude on a pirate ship and you find a devil fruit and you eat it and you get the power and you somehow find a second one, you would not even risk it. And I think there might be some truth to what Jabra was saying, that like maybe you feel like weird vibes off of the second fruit. Like, I don't know about this kind of situation. And then Blackbeard was the one to actually test it, and then maybe
he was like, I'm fine,
Yeah, I'm fine. It gives you a split personality, so that's kind of weird. No, it's not. Yes, it is. And it just goes from there. Yeah.
I'm like that. Yeah, such like so fascinating. Like, do you feel what's your gut feeling on devil fruits? Is it more like is it actual like some magic? Is it ancient technology, like biotechnology, maybe even from the ancient kingdom? Is it that some of the Lunarians or like some race that had special abilities like Nika got turned into fruits?
I would prefer if we go like with the Adam and Eve myth with this one, where the idea is like it's the forbidden fruit and it's something that Eam despises and the god of the world despises, and the creation of like the first devil fruit giving like existence in the world allowed humans to create more based off their own desires. Human desire is essentially endless. So it's like, I want to be able to, turn into lightning. I want to be able to fly. I want to turn into a jacket. They started getting weirder as time went on.
The jacket, yeah.
But they started getting weirder.
I want to turn other people into toys and dominate their entire existence.
The idea is like the Logias started first. The zones, like I want to be a giraffe. I want to be an elephant. And that's where that happened. And then the weird Paramecias started popping up later. And it's like Eam just sees these things as just like
threats,
a sin against nature themselves, and it's just like I need to just eliminate them, right?
Well, because I guess in like a certain way, devil fruits are like themselves a little bit of like what Joy Boy or Nika also represent, right? Like this like spirit of freedom and fantasy, right?
Yeah, freedom. Like you could do whatever, but it also lends to chaos. Would be a better example for Nika, not just in freedom, but like chaos, like in
chaos
general.
And anarchy. Yeah,
chaos and anarchy kind of.
The one thing I personally like, or the one thing that I haven't really figured out yet in that regard is, I really want Nika, I guess, to be their own person that actually existed in the world. And so there must have been some sort of process where his abilities and his will got like imbued into this fruit. And I'm like, is it just that like there's like, because you have the entire thing with the soul, like the soul be or people of the like the souls of the ancestors being in trees. You have that in Shandora, why they don't want to cut down the trees.
Yeah,
or like,
why don't we cut down the trees?
Yeah, because like, and the same in Wano with the holy trees there, right? Don't cut those down. So I'm like, okay, is there like the spirits of these people like Nika? Is that captured in that fruit and they're like trapped almost and they like get passed on? And that's why there's an actual devil inside of the fruit, because it's these like people trapped from ancient times.
Yeah, that's a cool way of interpreting it as well. Like it's just a constant like thing that like through the actual trees of the stuff and the spirits that are trapped.
There's like weird things that Oda throws so many interesting like things out there.
But then again, we've seen the devil fruit reincarnate like with the axolotl. Like immediately, it's just like the nearest like apple that just. Then that's the question of like, is it proximity to the nearest fruit?
Yeah.
Is it a specific type? I was assuming Vegapunk was going to explain this because Oda for years was like, oh yeah, don't worry. When Vegapunk shows up, we'll find out all about devil fruits. And we basically human desire. It's like, go on.
But Vegapunk was also like,
desire can be devil fruits. Elaborate. Yes.
when he was like, but that's only my theory. I'm like, great.
What's
So
the
you
process?
don't know either.
You've studied this so much.
Yeah. It's
Dude.
I love it though. Like the fact again, like what we talked about, like not wanting One Piece to end too soon. The fact like that almost every time we get more answers at the moment, we get more new questions than we get answers.
That's
like
the way
really...
that Oda does it. But hey, I mean, we're gonna learn a little bit more about the Void Century before we get the Void Century flashback. I mean, we just kind of have to because I don't want to go into that completely cold. You know?
No. And again, I feel like there will definitely be like some other interesting twists and turns still in like we're like, oh, we always took it for granted that this was a fact. Like, oh, turns out we're completely wrong, right? So, very excited. All right, with that, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or discuss?
No, I mean, I think we covered a lot of a litany of different topics today, from conspiracy theories to. Existential crises to One Piece, to a little bit of One Piece in there too. So we've covered a lot. It's an interesting conversation.
For real. That was thank you, man. I appreciate it. No, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully we can do this next time in person when you're in Japan.
In actual Japan. Like that would be wild.
That would be fantastic. I'm super excited to like show you some cool places and like show you some stuff in Tokyo and around here. Otherwise, people can obviously find you on the Tekking101 channel on YouTube.
Subscribe to Tekking101, and I have a channel that I always forget to promote. It's Boncast, which is my Bleach podcast, where I'm covering the 1,000-Year Blood War arc. Go check out
even
that
I did not know that.
I am horrible at promoting my own
stuff.
You know?
I'm going to subscribe to that right now.
They're good with YouTube. They'll find my Bleach stuff. So Boncast channel, Tekking101 channel, and then the Boncast is also up on Spotify and Google Play. Also, all my videos are on Spotify as well, like audio format. So that's all my stuff that is worth promoting.
And links to everything, of course, in the video description. So please... follow Matt everywhere. I'm definitely gonna check out the Bleach because Blood War has been so good as well.
The Blood War is so good. And we're getting a 2-episode finale in a few weeks, and that's gonna be wild. And then Core 4, which is gonna have all this extra stuff. So I'm excited.
I'm so happy that they're like saving Bleach with this like anime.
Yes, they're doing a really good job with this.
Doing good job.
Yeah,
Matt, I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you everyone for listening. Whether you've been actually watching this or just cleaning your kitchen, appreciate you nonetheless. And if you leave us a like, we will know that you enjoy podcasts like this. I would love to make more.